Hello, JBR listeners. This is Tom jumping in just quickly before we start today's episode. Basically, we finished recording this episode a few hours before we heard the news about Sir Roger. So if you're wondering why we sort of don't make reference to Sir Roger or any of that stuff in this week's episode, that's why. It's because we recorded it before that news broke. I also just wanted to give a quick mention to our UNICEF collection that we are doing in Roger's memory. We're really going to try and shoot for £1,500. We're nearly there. We're just under 1,200 as I record this. So if you haven't donated yet, we'd love it if you'd run along and do that. It's basically just a charity collection in Sir Roger's name for UNICEF, which, as we all know, is very dear to his heart. So yeah, if you're a JBR listener and you enjoy the show and you've obviously enjoyed Sir Roger's Bondian gifts to us all throughout his life, it would be really, really cool if you could run along and do a donation. You can do that anywhere from the world, anywhere in the world as well. So you don't have to be in England or anything like that. You can just donate if you're anywhere on the planet. So if you just go to jamesbondradio.com/Roger, that's jamesbondradio.com/Roger. There's a little redirect setup that'll take you to the Just Giving page where you can do that super easy. So yeah, let's pay tribute to the great man and put some good old positive energy out into the world at the same time. Last thing then, before we get started, you might notice I don't sound my usual crispy self. That's because I was a little bit of a muppet and I wasn't actually recording with my nice microphone, and I was recording through my crappy laptop one. So unfortunately I sound a little bit tinny this week, but apologies for that. Chris is still sounding his usual crispy self, so you can laze around in the beautiful tones of Chris's voice whilst being slightly disappointed at my less than crispy tones for this week. But hopefully the nice microphone will be back next time. All right, cool. Let's have the great man himself introduce us to this week's episode.
Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, welcome everyone to James Bond Radio. This is episode 122. With me today, as always, is my good pal, Mr. Tom Sears. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, my good buddy. I'm very well. I'm excited to crack on with the Living Daylights Part 2. I thoroughly enjoyed Part 1. Really enjoyed revisiting it and sort of taking it through scene by scene. And I'm super excited to get stuck into Part 2. How about you?
Definitely. Part 1, it was... I enjoy myself a lot. It is a cracking film. And I think that first half, as I mentioned at the end of the last episode, I think that is some classic Bond there. Yeah. That first hour is brilliant. But yeah, likewise, great. Can't wait to get stuck into part 2. There's a lot of good stuff in part 2, which I'm really looking forward to getting to.
Yeah.
And, Timmy D's on good form. So
absolutely. Good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff.
So obviously we've got to mention the sad news from the world of Bond in recent times, which is obviously the passing away of Chris Cornell. How unexpected was that?
Mate, I was so gutted, right? Obviously for loads of reasons, but this guy is 52. I mean, that's no age, is it really? That's obviously sad enough. I remember being back at uni and one of my mates sort of got me into Audio Slave and one or two others, and I remember thinking, wow, this is a pretty cool sound. Yeah. And then obviously one of the best Bond themes, I don't care what anyone says, one of the best Bond themes that's ever been sung, that power, that energy, and how it suited that film so well. Yeah. I mean, it's just unforgettable, really.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with that is I always think what a weird choice it was to go with Chris Cornell completely out of the blue. Because, typically you go with the big stars, don't you? Do you know what I mean? But like to come with an untested Bond, with a new Bond in it, after a long break and after the previous film
Madonna.
And the previous song, like to go with something like that, it was so not the obvious choice, but clearly was the best song for it. Do you know what I mean? And it was like I said when we did the Bond songs episode, it was like you take someone like Madonna who clearly didn't even try. She just had something sat in a drawer somewhere and she was like, yeah, let's stick Die Another Day in the chorus and we'll use that. Whereas this dude has obviously got down with the script and really gone through the whole thing and really felt what that story meant and served up like the perfect song for it. So it's proper gutting, man. And I read into it a little bit. Obviously he hung himself, which didn't come out till a little bit later. But the worst part about it is, if it is worse, I don't know. But apparently his wife said that she was talking to him on the phone just before it happened. and he apparently he's been on some sort of anxiety medication, and he took an extra one that night, and she thinks one of the side effects of that medication is suicidal thoughts. So she thinks that might have been the thing that tipped him over the edge, which is terrible. So man,
that's not good. No, well, like you said, he's obviously got a partner and kids as well. I think he's got 3 kids, does he, or something like that, which obviously isn't great. But that's to reach that point where you have to do something like that. And like you said, if they had like an impact on him, I mean, it's not good.
Yeah, totally.
Not good at all.
But oh man, what we'll do for the iTunes version, we will play out some Chris Cornell at the end of today's episode. Obviously, we won't be able to do that on the YouTube version because we will get slapped and God knows what else. But nice little tribute for the man who brought us one of the best Bond songs of all time, as far as I'm concerned. So, in sort of rather appropriate continuations on from that, obviously, is then this week or last week now, they announced the whole Casino Royale sort of viewing at the Royal Albert Hall with the live concert orchestra playing the score live with David Arnold at the helm. How amazing is that, dude?
This is going to be so good, right? So as soon as I sort of heard about it, it was suddenly posted on every single Bond group and forum that you can think of. Like as soon as people got wind of it, it was like, oh my God, we've got to check this out. Obviously, David Arnold doing a Q&A to kick things off, seeing Bond on the big screen, Casino Royale on the big screen, the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra in front, just like busting out the soundtrack. It is going to be unbelievable. But not only that, you saw it and you're like, man, there's no way I can like stay over the other side of the world. Yeah. You're gonna make a special little surprise for us, aren't you?
Yeah, man. I looked at it and I was like, shit, I can't miss another one, basically, because obviously, there's been all the JBR meetups and stuff that I haven't been around for because of over here in Thailand, obviously. And then I thought, do you know what? I'm going to pencil in the end of September for Bond Stars in case we can get tickets to that or we can go along. I'll pencil that in and sort of see how it goes, keeping it on the back burner. And then I saw that and I was like, well, I can't miss this because I will be absolutely heartbroken, like missing that, because I feel like that's a kind of a once in a lifetime thing. Do you know what I mean? They did say in the press release, I think, that like there's going to be more Bond viewings, like showings like that with a live orchestra. But it's Casino Royale, dude. I was like, I can't miss this. So yeah, I've got my tickets as well, and I'm coming, man. I'm coming.
Yeah, and not only that, I think there's going to be at least 20, 25, 30 maybe even of the JBR family going to be there listening. I've so many people have been saying, they've got tickets or they're coming. I think the majority of us are going to go to the afternoon showing. So anyone who hasn't booked up yet, who's still interested, it's on Saturday 30th of September. The afternoon showing is 2:30 and there's an evening showing at 7:30. I know a few people can't make the afternoon and they're going to the evening, but that's cool. But either which way, we'll obviously try and meet up with everyone, have a drink afterwards and do that sort of thing and have a bit of chat about Bond. So it should be a cracking day.
Yeah, here's a question. Definitely. Are you gonna crack out the old suited and booted styly, or are you gonna go in shorts and t-shirt?
I'm not going to go in shorts and t-shirt. I'm not going to, I don't think dinner jacket, but I think definitely put the smarts on a little bit.
Do you know what I'm doing? I'm cracking out the Spectre Premier outfit again. I'm going full on, man. I'm not messing about. I'm going full on. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care that it's the afternoon. I'm going suited and booted. I'm going full on.
Right. Yeah. Sweet. In that case, you might have to just set the tone for everyone else.
Yeah, either that or I'll be the only one there and I'll look like a bit of a pillock, but who cares? I'm down. Right. I'm up for it. Yeah, so
mate, me too.
30th of September, man. So anybody who hasn't got involved, if there are indeed still tickets left by this point, get yourself some tickets for the afternoon show and come hang out with us afterwards and we'll go out, get some food, get some dinner, get some drinks on and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be good. There's loads of top dollar JBR family members going as well, so it's going to be great. Nice. What else has been going on? We got any other news?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Bond 25 news, it's been a little bit. Obviously, we had loads last time. I think it's been a little bit slow. There was a bit in about MGM. Basically, their quarter profits have gone down by something like 42% decline on last year. Obviously, last year they had Spectre to help fill the coffers. This year they haven't got anything, and it's kind of like, well, hang on a minute. This is like a glowing beacon to say, well, let's get cracking on Bond 25.
Yeah.
You need some money. I think it's all, a lot of this is on obviously they need a distributing partner, a studio distributing partner. We mentioned a few last time. Don't think that's progressed as they definitely obviously haven't chosen one yet. But MGM as well. MGM seem to have like a troubled life, don't they? They seem to have forever be in the doldrums, and then suddenly they'll perk back up, and then they'll go back down. It seems like it's such a sort of crazy ass business that. Yeah. But hopefully, things will happen, and then things can kick on with 125 soon. Yeah, I'd like to, because I know you get people saying, what's going on? Daniel's not committing, so he doesn't like it. Let's just get rid of him. Or Elon, they're crap. They're not doing a film every year like Disney or whatever. And it's like there are so many things you got to think about. But it would be nice just to hopefully see it at least start progressing. Do you know what I mean?
Some developments. I mean, let's think about the kind of state of play with Spectre. I think it was the 6th of December that they did the big press release thing where they released the title. So, I think it was the 6th of December. Yeah, and they usually don't they? They usually literally announce that and then they start shooting the same day, don't they? Yeah. So that's the sort of, I think. If we haven't heard anything by December, then I think we have something to sort of get a little bit worried about. I think that's as far as I'm concerned. Because if I remember correctly, it was we were speculating about this, that, and the other, and then out of the blue on like Facebook pages, on the 007 Facebook page, on the Twitter, it was just like news event on 6th of the 12th, and we were like, oh, here it is, and then it all just went apeshit from there on in. So I'm expecting. Yeah, I'm expecting a few little dribs and drabs of like rumours, and then by the end of the summer, I would hope we'd have something concrete, as in like, okay, we're starting to see the engine start to move out of the station a little bit. I think. Yeah,
definitely, man. When they do another proper title release, we're going to have to live stream both of us at the same time. Yeah. That's going to be epic.
Yeah, man. That was cool. Yeah, do you know, I think that was one of my favourite times as a fan, was because obviously we did that thing where we had the live chat thing, didn't we, on the James Bond Radio website, where we had the live stream embedded on the page, and then everybody's in the chat box kind of commenting and going backwards and forwards. And there was a real sense of community around it. And I think that was my favourite time, one of my favourite times as a fan anyway, is just like all the excitement, all the hustle and bustle going on with it. And I remember that was my first trip to Thailand when that was happening, and I was staying in this little hotel by myself, and I remember being so excited, and then going out to like the little restaurant, and everybody's just getting on with their lives, eating some dinner, and I'm like, you don't even know what's happened today, you don't even understand. And I had nobody to talk to, so there we go. But yeah, man, exciting times nonetheless. I'm firmly of the belief it's going to start rolling soon. I think, end of the summer, a couple of more months, I reckon we'll start getting some solid stuff coming through. Now, in other news, I'd just like to say, Chris, you're wearing a very fetching T-shirt today.
Oh, well, thank you, Tom. It's one that I picked up earlier, and yes, it's rather nice. The
original vintage JBR T-shirt. Speaking of which... by popular demand,
what you're doing there,
we might have a little bit of news on the JBR merchandise front. You've been on the blower to me several times. You're going, listen, the JBR family are bugging me every single day. They want another T-shirt, and we're like, all right, well, we'll get some together. So we may have some rumblings of something coming very, very soon. So keep your eyes out on the JBR social medias and all that kind of stuff for some news on some rather high fashion items, and maybe a few other bits and bobs as well.
I think so. Yeah, there's a lot of JBR goodness to be had. Obviously, we'll let you know as things progress.
Indeed.
But,
So, before we crack on then with Living Daylights Part 2, come and join us on Facebook. Just put James Bond Radio into the Facebook search and you will find us. Make sure you like the page. Come and follow us on Twitter, which is @JamesBondRadio. Come and follow us on Periscope, which again is @JamesBondRadio. On there, you'll get loads of videos and stuff that you won't find anywhere else. Live streams and stuff like that. Interviews with Bond girls. Interviews with God knows who, and stuff and exciting things, and I can't express myself properly with the right words, but you know what I'm saying. It's all good stuff, like Bond locations, Pinewood Studios, all that stuff is on there. Lovely. You can come to jamesbondradio.com, which good old Jack Lugo has done a couple of amazing blog posts lately about the 2003 soundtrack releases, all the expanded editions and all that kind of stuff. Some interviews over there which were really great. So if you haven't looked at those yet, come over to jamesbondradio.com livingdaylights.com and check those out. You can, of course, leave us a voicemail over there as well. If you click the leave us a voicemail button on the right-hand side, you can leave us a question, you can leave us a piece of trivia, you can just say hello, you can just pretty much do whatever you want, really, as long as it's not too graphic and nasty. But feel free to get involved with that. Also, there is the iTunes. Make sure you come and subscribe on iTunes, because that's the most useful thing for us to attract more listeners. If you come and subscribe on iTunes, even if you don't really use iTunes, it helps us rank higher and attract more listeners and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, if you would leave us a lovely glowing 5-star review on the iTunes page as well, that is super, super useful. So I'm going to call out to anybody who's been a long-time listener and hasn't left an iTunes review yet. Please, 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 go and leave us a 5-star review. And obviously you've got to agree with it being 5-star. If you think we're shit, then, you leave us 1 if you want, but please don't. Yes, leave us a lovely glowing 5-star review, and that really, really helps us to do all the stuff like attracting more listeners and ranking higher in the charts and all that kind of stuff. And then last but not least, if you come over to jamesbondradio.com, there is the donate link as well if you want to help keep the good ship JBR afloat. That's always appreciated and never expected. Other ways you can help: post about JBR on social medias, on forums, on Reddit, and all that kind of stuff, because good old-fashioned word of mouth is the most powerful thing of all. So that would be lovely if you could do some of that.
Do you think, Tom, there'll ever be an evil organisation that strictly comes to power through word of mouth alone? So it's one little dude, but he's so evil that people start talking about him, and then soon he's known the world over as the most evil man, and it's all through word of mouth. Is that how powerful it is?
It is that powerful. I would beg to suggest that that's probably how Blofeld rose to power. All those. Do you remember all those stories about him in the Foreign Legion and stuff in the early Spectre scripts? It was like there was almost like a myth of this little man going around who was actually really nasty. So I'm going to have to read those scripts again, actually, because there was some gold in there that they didn't use. I'd be intrigued.
I think they should mine. Yeah. I remember that sort of sun torture thing. What was it called? What did they call it?
I can't remember. It had a name, didn't it? But it was basically like almost like a stone igloo, and then the sun would shine through, and it would just basically bake you alive or something. And they had Bond and Q in there, didn't they, together? In the earlier draft, but yeah, there's some gold in there, even with just backstory and stuff. I'm gonna reread those. Cool. So, have we got a listener trivia question before we get started, Chris, this week?
We have indeed. So the listener trivia question this week is from Barney Metcalf. Shall we have a listen?
Let's have a listen.
Hey, Tom and Chris, Barney Metcalf here with a trivia question for you. And I think this is a pretty good one because I only found it out recently. So here it is. What is the name of a city in the Congo that has the same name as a Bond villain? Repeat, that is a city in the Congo that has the same name as a Bond villain. Okay, I hope you should figure this one out. I don't know it's hard if it's hard or not, but yeah, hopefully it will give you a good bit of knowledge about the Congo. So, bye.
All right, Chris. Good question from Barney there. Are you familiar with the Congo?
Yeah.
Have you holidayed there recently?
Well, which Congo is he referring to? Because there's the Republic of Congo and there's the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
And they're different things. You're obviously more tooled up than I am with this kind of stuff. So
they are different countries. I have been to neither. I do not know what is in either. But yeah, interesting. I definitely don't know off the top of my head. I think that's going to take some logical thinking to try and come up with some suitable answers.
I would say you would have to go down the route of like an African-sounding name of some description. I've got one in mind at this point, but we will obviously find out the answer to that later in today's episode. So, should we get cracking with some Timmy D then?
Let's do it. Living Daylights Part 2. Here we go.
Who are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond.
James.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy. As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Right then, Chris, part 2, here it is. Now, I've been keeping an eye on the old social media rumblings after we released episode 1, I should say part 1 of Living Daylights. And there seems to be a lot of positive energy around The Living Daylights. A lot of people that proper love it. Now, one of the things I did notice was there are a couple of voices in there that say first half's great, second half not quite as much. So before we get cracking, what are your thoughts on that side of things?
To a certain extent, I have to agree with that, purely because I think that first half of Daylights is some of the best Bonds in the series by far. I think the second half of Daylights is still quality. This is prior to watching it again. I've always thought, there's a lot of good stuff in it as well. But that first half for me is just brilliant.
I suppose
I kind of know where they're coming from.
Yeah, me too. And I suppose the danger with it is with any Bond film really, is that you usually get the tropes out of the way in the first half, don't you? If you've got the bit with the car and the Q branch scene and all that kind of stuff and the pre-title sequence, all those kind of like hardcore Bond things that typically appear and make it Bond happen in that first half. So I suppose it's trickier in the second half to sort of keep that going in a sense in some ways. But let's get stuck into it then, and then we will reconvene at the end and see how we feel about the second half of The Living Daylights. Nice. So where did we leave off last time?
Okay, so basically we cut back to the last time was just after Saunders got sliced by Nikros, and then Bond tells Cara that he got the message. Basically, we cut from there to Tangier. So Bond, he's obviously heard about Pushkin and everything, so he's basically following Pushkin. And he's in his car watching him, and he's got these binocular glasses, Tom. Now, they obviously do the job. They obviously, they're good for zooming in on things. Do you think they're slightly obvious, or do you think they're pretty cool?
I would say yes, they are a little bit obvious, aren't they? Especially because it's like you've got the lenses on there that you almost sort of like have to dial in like a pair of binoculars. So there are, they are a little bit conspicuous, aren't they? I suppose. But hey,
I think nowadays you just have your normal sunglasses or glasses, whatever it is. There'd be a little button, or you could almost just focus your eyes, and that's how you'd get the zoom within the lens.
Yeah, man.
Probably.
Yeah, but, I would say. I mean, fast forward even 10 years from now. And, if you look at Pierce's X-ray specs, for example, a lot more sort of low profile, aren't they, Whereas I guess, that was just the technologies at the time, It's like, if you can imagine the X-ray specs in the 80s, I imagine they'd have been, a lot different. Yeah. But yeah, so I tell you what I like about this, right, is we've got some proper deadly Bond here, haven't we? In the sense that this isn't your sort of run-of-the-mill sort of Bond action sequence. We've got Bond doing some like detective spying stuff, isn't he? We've got him like staking somebody out on the tail. Obviously, he's been sent here to kill Pushkin by M, and that's some dark Fleming stuff, isn't it? Which is always very exciting. I always like the injection of Fleming when we see it on the screen. And I would have to say, man, this sequence is, once we finally get into Pushkin's hotel room, that's a very cold-blooded scene, isn't it? And it's different. It's a different scene. But I feel like when you see something like Pierce's Bond shooting Electra King at point-blank range, it takes you aback a bit, doesn't it? You're like, "Ooh, I wasn't really expecting that to happen." And I think you've got that same sort of level of cold-bloodedness in this. It feels very dark. Bond feels very like he's there to get the job done. We know he has a relationship with Pushkin because he talked about it in the first half with M, didn't he? If it has to be done, I'd rather do it, and all that kind of stuff. What do you think about this scene?
Well, for me, I think if you take the scene with him shooting Cara, the gun out of Cara's hand early on, and you take this scene in a hotel and put those together, that is pure cold-hearted Fleming Bond. Yeah. And I think Dalton is amazing in both scenes, but visually I think he looks great. It's Bond doing his job, and as we'll get to in a moment, it's the professionalism, and he is the best at what he does, and you get to see why in those two scenes. And I think those two are pure, like I said, pure Fleming, pure Bond, and I love them both. I think with this one, so he's obviously scoping out Pushkin. You get those little buskers doing the thing outside, and he's like, shoving them away. Yeah. He follows him to the hotel, goes to see his mistress with the flowers. He's got his little bulldog guard with him, hasn't he? Same sort of dude. So he goes into his hotel room, and sees, obviously, she's looking a bit distressed. What's wrong, whatever. Bond's there. And now, this is just so good. So basically, he obviously tells Pushkin to sit down, shoves him back on the bed. And this is where, Pushkin sort of, this isn't a social visit, is it, Bond? Is it? And Bond basically sort of tells him what his mission is. His mission is to kill him. And there's some fabulous stuff here. So that line where, it kind of gets to the end. Basically, Bond sort of mentions about spionum and all that sort of stuff, and Pushkin's like, well, that was deactivated years ago, and that exchange where Bond basically says, well, Pushkin says, well, it's a matter of trust. Who do you believe, Koskoff or me? And then Bond says, if I trusted Koskoff, we wouldn't be talking. And I love that bit. It's just so good because obviously, like, Pushkin wouldn't be alive if that was the case. And then it's, but as long as he's alive, we'll never know what he's up to.
Yeah.
And then Pushkin does the classic.
Then I must die.
That is beautiful, though, isn't it? That whole scene, so you've got that first exchange, and then Pushkin, he does that little sneaky bit, doesn't he, where he taps his watch to call the guard.
Yes.
Bond hits him, and then the guard,
that's
and then
brutal, man. That bit when he proper twats him with the gun, and he's like, "Oh, fucking stupid." He obviously doesn't say that, but you know what I mean. It's a nasty, it's an uncomfortable scene, is what it is, man. I don't feel nice when I'm watching it. It's kind of like the ugly side of spying, I think, is what it is.
It is. Yeah, he gives him a proper whack, and then obviously he strips the girl, doesn't he? Yeah. And then strips Rubovich, and then the guard opens, and Bond slams the door into him, whacks him again with his Walther. Yeah. Tells Rubovich to get in the bathroom or whatever, and then he really sort of becomes cool, as he kind of basically takes over the scene, doesn't he?
Totally.
So good.
And I think ultimately, if you were going to choose one moment in this film to say this is a new Bond, this isn't Roger's Bond anymore, this is something else, it would be this scene, I think, because you would never have got this scene out of Sir Roger. You might have in the early days of Sir Roger, the pulling of Maud Adams' arm and stuff like that. You might have got a little bit like that with Rubovich, but the tearing of the top and the sort of cold-blooded. We'd have at least got it from Roger when you see the boobage.
Speaking of there was a nice bit of boobage actually in this.
I
scene,
remember it well from my youth, absolutely. And we shouldn't drop one of our listeners in there in the shit in case his missus is listening. But I noticed on the JBR South Central Facebook page this particular frame where you see the Rubovich boob was posted by one of our listeners. But he shall remain nameless. Noble. It shall remain nameless, and we won't drop him in it with his missus. Absolutely.
No, we definitely won't. We definitely won't. But well done for pausing it on such a good frame.
I mean, we salute you for providing a great service to us boys. Thank you. Yeah.
And I know we mentioned it before, but the music is great. So as soon as he tells Rubovich to get in the bathroom, the music kicks in, and I think that adds to it. Yeah. When Bond, obviously, and then him and Pushkin have that exchange. And I think it's just top quality Bond, that scene.
Now,
that whole scene
I've got a question for you, Chris, right?
Yes.
In different times, right, I feel like Pushkin would have been one of Bond's proper mates, like a Kerim Bey. Do you know what I mean? I feel like they would have that sort of relationship.
Yeah. I love Pushkin. I think he's warm, he's charming. He is like a Kerim Bey or a Draco or something like that. Obviously, he's kind of more on the villain side, at least initially. I kind of think he is, or at least he's obviously sort of on that side of the fence. But there's definitely that mutual respect between them, which I love. And John Rhys-Davies is a brilliant actor. Yeah. He's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And I think Pushkin is a really, really solid character. I love him.
It's kind of like Sir Miles and General Gogol in Spy Love, isn't it? Where they love each other a little bit despite being on opposite teams. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly what it's like.
Now, I tell you what, this next sequence, obviously, so, then I must die. And then the next thing you see is old Pushkin giving his speech at the trade conference. And then obviously you hear the bang, 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 blood everywhere. And you assume he's dead. Now, what do you think about the timing on this? Because you get the reveal that Necros is there and he's about to shoot him, and then obviously it's Bond that's actually done the job, and then obviously the whole chase kicks off. What do you think about that in particular, in the sense that Necros has been sent to do the same job as Bond, but there's a little twist in there?
I think it's great because early on in the film, Whittaker said, all right, do it, as in kill Saunders, but if Pushkin's alive at the day of the conference, kill him.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's what Necros is there to do. And he gets his gun and he's literally just about to do it, and then bang, 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 and he shines a light on Bond. Bond fires a light and basically legs it out.
That moment where he turns and shoots the spotlight is fucking glorious.
How cool
man.
is that?
Yeah, I love that.
It's so good, isn't it? I mean, Timmy rocks, man. He really rocks in this film. Like I just love him in this. And he turns, shoots the light, and he doesn't even sort of leg it like as in frightened. He just kind of strides out, doesn't he, with intent, sort of thing. And obviously, Necros sort of he's obviously seen that Bond's done it. So Bond sort of gets out on the roof. The police chase him. There's a great bit where Rubovich is sort of crying over Pushkin's body, and Necros watches as they go into that room, and then they close the door, and suddenly he sort of gets up, doesn't he? Takes off his top, removes the blood bags. He's like, "That's the first time I've ever been grateful that James Bond is a good shot." Or
great line,
it is.
love that.
And and you just see his missus sort of shock. It's quite cool.
Yeah.
Now it was interesting with this roof chase. Okay, certain things I thought was great. It's a little bit of mini parkour, isn't it? It's almost a bit Casino Royale, sort of obviously light, but I like the bit with the aerial where he springs down and then it springs up into the face, and obviously quite a few nice jumps on the rooftop jumps. Now, for whatever reason, firstly, I know we're both happy that they didn't go with the magic carpet thing, just because it was mega slow. It probably would have been a step too far, and it didn't work. In those, if you haven't seen it in some behind-the-scenes shots, there was a removed sequence where he gets a carpet that's lying around, lays it on top of, I think, some like telephone wires or something, and slides down it, and then some bystanders look up, and it looks like he's on a magic carpet. And that's you would have got away with that in Octopussy with Sir Roger for sure. Yes,
you'd have got away with that.
You would have done. But with, man, he could have done that.
He could have done.
Yeah, in the Indian scenes going down over the bazaar or something.
But with Timmy, that would have been a step too far.
No.
I feel like so it's an interesting mix, isn't it? Because obviously we've just had a really dark scene, right? And of course we've had that assassination with a slightly comedic end, like you just said, when he sits up. But then I would say this chase is quite a light-hearted chase at the same time, isn't it? Like that thing you mentioned with the aerial, like pinging it back. That's a very sort of classic Bond sort of chase, isn't it? Like,
again, that's Roger could have done that as well.
Totally,
couldn't he?
Yeah, completely. So it's interesting where they're striking a balance, isn't it? Because they could have easily made this like a really sort of like frantic, deadly chase, but it feels like one of those. You know, remember when we reviewed From Russia's Love way back in the day, and it was like in the Gypsy Camp fight, and they were saying how like Bond, they didn't want him to sort of like get stuck in with the fight, and they wanted him to sort of glide over everybody, and that's why he's sort of like, he'll shoot this guy over here, and then he'll pull this rope over here, and that will fall down on two dudes fighting or whatever, and he never really gets. I get the same vibe from this chase a little bit. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good shout. I think it definitely feels a bit lighter compared to what we've just seen. One thing I did think that I know they were going to extend it, not just a magic carpet. There was going to be, I think, like the police chief was going to fall into some dye as part of it. That would have been quite more comedic as well. Yeah. But there was going to be more to it. But I did think to myself, man, I thought this chase was longer. I for some reason it just seemed really short to me. I know I haven't sort of seen the film for a while. Yeah. I obviously enjoyed it, but I thought there was going to be more rooftop jumping for some reason. I don't know why. I had that feeling. Like, that's just something I had. But I still think it's a great little scene. And I think that's pretty cool. And then obviously he eventually makes it away from the police, he makes it down to the street, and the police are about to get him. He basically steals a pair of sunnies, and then Liz and Ava kind of say, "Oh, do you want to come to a party?
You want to go to a party?" Do you know what I love about it? I fucking love this. As soon as they show up, you get the saxophone out again. Love that stuff, man. It's so cheesy, yet it always makes me smile. And I wonder whether that is the last use of the sexy lady saxophone in the series.
Interesting.
Because it's John Barry's last one, obviously, and John Barry used to like a bit of sexy lady saxophone. And I can't think of an occasion where it's used after The Living Daylights. Maybe there is. Maybe our listeners can help out with that. But I feel like that might be the last one.
Well, do you think we should bring it back? Bit of Bond 25, cheesy sax?
Absolutely, man. That's what I've always been saying. Like the lover man side of Bond, and we saw a little bit of it in Spectre that more than we usually do, and it would have been lovely to have a bit of that in there. As cheesy as it is, I for me personally, I want it. I want some sexy lady saxophone. Yeah.
It would be good, even if it's just like one scene, just to it would be nice. I'd like to see that as well. So they basically, he then finds out that they're obviously working for Leiter. He brings him down to Leiter's boat. What are you trying to do? Start World War III?
I've got a question for you, right? Why does Leiter always do this? Why doesn't he just go, all right, James, I'm over here, come down onto my boat? Yeah. Why does he always, from way back in the day in Dr. No, hold it? Like, why does he always pretend to capture Bond first of all and then be like, hey, I'm friends?
Well, in Dr. No, they didn't quite know each other, did they?
That's true.
That was the first time they met.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's allowed.
Yeah.
I think in every other Bond, they're kind of been all right. I don't know. In this one, it's a bit weird. I guess he just was doing it for shits and giggles, wasn't he? But,
I guess so.
Yeah. Okay. So, what do you think of John Terrier's Felix Leiter? I've got an opinion on it, but I'd like to.
I think I know what that is too. I don't know why. I just don't warm to him as Felix Leiter very much. Felix. He's so different from actor to actor, isn't he? Like, if you look at Jack Lord, super cool, almost like a contemporary of Bond in terms of being like a handsome ladies' man kind of fella. Then you got like your Cecil Linders, who were obviously, you'd imagine Cecil Linders got a wife and kids at home, and he puts his feet up and reads the newspaper on a Sunday afternoon kind of guy. Do you know what I mean? And then you've got David Hedison, who he's got his own thing going on, and then this dude as well. They're all sort of so different as you go through each actor, but for some reason, it's not like Felix has to be this one static type of character that you see every time. But for some reason, I don't warm to this dude, and I don't really know why. No. Is it his haircut, Chris? What do you think it is?
Maybe his haircut. I think the reason is, I think he just comes across a little bit wooden, maybe, but I think it's the chemistry that isn't there.
Yeah.
Because if you think about License to Kill, you think about Hedison and Dalton and the Bond and Leiter chemistry they've got there. It's brilliant. Yeah. Obviously, Craig and Felix in Casino or Quantum or whatever, great. Jack Lord, great. Rick Van Nutter and Thunderball, brilliant. Yeah. I just don't. I know they haven't got a huge amount of screen time in Daylights, but I almost feel as if he was kind of forced in there a little bit. And they just didn't seem to. You couldn't imagine them being mates out, going for a drink or talking about the ladies or whatever it is. You just can't. I just don't get that feeling from Leiter in this one.
I agree totally. It's like I would say most people would say it's like the new series of Top Gear, where the presenters just don't have that chemistry together like the old lot did. And I feel like it's the same. Like Roger and David Hedison. Like David Hedison gets on with everybody, doesn't he? At the end of the day.
Oh yeah, he's class.
I feel like they definitely had that vibe together. They seemed like mates, and there was a bit of banter between the two of them.
That's what you need. Yeah, you need that banter, don't you? And like being able to rip it out of each other. That's what good mates do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think they've quite got that in this one.
I feel it does. It does feel forced. I think that's probably what we're responding to. I think.
Yeah, probably. But there we go. So basically, Bond tells Leiter, Pushkin's assassination was a fake. He sort of obviously gets to live. Leiter tells Bond that he's been keeping an eye on Whittaker from that end, so they're let's talk shop type thing. So that's fine. Then we cut to Whittaker's villa. Necros comes back, and Whittaker and Koskoff congratulate him because they think he killed Pushkin, and he sort of says, "Oh no, it wasn't me. Bond did it." And I love Koskoff's reaction here. He's like, "I told you the British believe me. I told you." And he's just so excited, isn't he? He's like punching the air and everything. He's loving it. And Whittaker says, "Great, we can ship the diamond. Tell Amsterdam, ship the diamond's brilliant. Everyone's happy." They get a phone call. Whittaker's tells Koskoff, "It's for you," and he answers it, and you can see his face drain. And obviously, at this point, he thinks Cara has been killed by Bond ages ago. And obviously, we find out that's who it is. Obviously, in a later scene. So we then cut back to Bond returning to Cara. She's playing on a cello, and he comes in. And as soon as like he closes the door and she stops, you can tell something's not right. Like she's cold to him. Yeah. He goes up to her. He goes to kind of hold her hand. She walks straight past him, and he like, you know, and you can tell he's a bit uncertain at first. And she's straight away. She's like, right, let's have a drink. Let's have a drink. Mm. And she's got her vodka martini ready. You know, gives it a nice little shake and stuff. And that reminds me of the sort of plight of every man who's been in a long-term relationship when they get home. And for whatever reason, the missus has got the and you're there thinking, "Oh fuck, what have I done wrong?
What is it?
What
have
I done?" And you've got to search through the memory banks to work out what on earth it is you've done. And I feel like the performance here is a perfect representation of that. It really is, yeah, completely. Yeah. But you'll never know. You'll never find out until you get informed what it is that you're in the doghouse for. Yeah, exactly. You'll never find out until that happens. Yeah. And exactly, Bond's in that sort of situation. So she obviously gives him the martini. He drains it, and you know, she says, "Did I get it right?" and everything like that. And then he's like, "Right, now's the time to tell her the truth." Okay, so he basically says, I'm a British spy. I'm not Koskoff's mate. You know, mentions about the deception and everything. But as he's doing it, you know, his head starts to get a bit dizzy and he's a bit uncertain what's going on. He realizes. Do you remember the name of the drug in the drink, Tom?
Chloral hydrate.
Yes, brilliant. So basically, he you know, he's about to sort of pass out or whatever, and he pulls down her sleeve and shows her, you know, that he tells her that he was the one sent to kill her. They shot the gun out of her arm. And I love the bit where his vision kind of like just goes askew.
Yeah.
As Necros walks in and he holds up his gun and basically collapses before he can do a shot. I love that. I think that works so well.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a revelation when I watched this scene, because I was sort of the opinion that the scene in Casino Royale where Bond gets poisoned and he goes into the bathroom and throws up was the first time we've ever seen Bond in a situation like that where he's all kind of fucked up. But it happens here, doesn't it? In this scene where he gets drunk, like when he's literally all messed up and his eyes are all over the place, and like you say, the double vision kind of thing as Necros comes in. That was like, oh yeah, that's kind of. And again, this scene is another dark one, isn't it? Like that moment where he tears the sleeve and stuff. You would never have gotten that out of Sir Roger in a million years. No. Like it's again, it's an uncomfortable scene. I feel like it's the same sort of tone as the Koskoff. The Pushkin. What do we call him last time? Koskoff. Koskin?
Koskins and Pushkin.
Whatever his name is. Yeah, that scene, it's that same sort of uncomfortable feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, completely is. And like, that's the intensity that Timmy brings, I think, to the role. Yeah. And why scenes like this work so well. I think they're great. And then when Koskoff comes over to Cara and says, "You're absolutely perfect," you can tell that he's, you know, that's one of the darkest moments that you see Koskoff, actually, because he's normally the kind of, you know, slimy Weasley but chirpy guy. Yeah. But when he goes up to Cara at that moment, he's really quiet and there's a silent menace to him. And I really like that, seeing that in Koskoff, because you don't get that a lot in this film. No. But he obviously, you know, he's got a plan for Cara, and that's what happens. But that's great. Okay, so after that, then they arrive at the airport in the ambulance. Now this is pretty cool. So they get these people inspecting the ambulance, and they see Bond is sort of in the back, and we see Bond's passport. And what name is in the passport, Tom?
It would be Jerzy Bondov.
How cool is that? Yeah. That's pretty cool. I like that. That's really nice. And basically, the guy tells him to open the case.
Like the customs official, and then
that's it. The customs official, and we see there's a heart being electrically sort of kept alive and sort of surrounded by ice, which has a little sparkle to it, but we don't quite know why yet. Yeah. So he basically says, "Yeah, go on," and close it and let them on. So they go they're allowed on the flight. The plane goes up. Now, this is quite cool. So Bond's kind of knocked out, or at least pretends he's still knocked out. Necros goes for a dump, and then Bond sort of Bond kind of comes to. They always go for a dump, don't they? Bond kind of comes to, and he tries to open the case, and we see the handle like eggs, bit on it, which is really cool.
Oh yeah, and that was taught to us by Kathleen Andrews last time, wasn't it? With her question of the day.
Brilliant.
Yep.
great question, that one. And then Cara obviously helps him undo the other latch. And then he says, that's an animal's heart. And then they obviously notice the diamonds in the ice as Necros comes back. Bond tells her, I need my key ring, sort of thing. They manage to get one latch down. And then Bond sort of distracts Necros, pretends he's like, coming to. Wake, coming to. And Cara, some people say Cara is a bit, ditzy and doesn't, a bit damselly, but she does a lot of good stuff in this film. So she obviously helps him with the latch on the case. And then when they arrive, she gets his key ring out the top and stuff like that. And she becomes, obviously we'll explain it a bit more later, but she's not she's not an idiot, Cara.
I think she helps. Yeah, there's definitely some ditziness in there. Like I suppose the
naivety. There's a lot of naivety.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I feel like the one that always sticks out in my mind is later on, obviously when Bond's in the plane in Afghanistan and he's trying to get her to drive up the back and she's just waving at him. Like that always makes me laugh. But there is definitely some stuff where she does some badassery as well, and she kicks some ass at the same time. So that's like, it's kind of almost like a reverse Tiffany Case, isn't it? It's like Tiffany Case starts off being a badass and becomes ditzy, and I think Cara is sort of a naive character, but pulls it out of the bag when it really matters.
Definitely, yeah. Which we'll obviously go into it in a bit more, but that's great. So Koskoff comes out in his general uniform, looking all prim and proper, and basically tells Bond that he's going to hand him over to the Russians for the murder of Pushkin. And Bond's like, "You get me to kill him, and then hand him over for his murder." And Koskoff basically says that he's been on a secret state mission to disinform British intelligence. So obviously, the defection was all
that's actually a brilliant plan, isn't it? When you think about it, because
it really is.
Pushkin is the dude who's after Koskoff and Whitaker. He's the one that's investigating them. He's snapping at their heels as they're kind of trying to stay one step ahead. Then he sort of manipulates Bond to go and actually kill Pushkin, and then delivers Bond to the authorities for the murder of Pushkin. It's like that's an open and shut case that if that had gone to plan, that would have been like totally hands clean, wouldn't it, at the end of that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. I think it's great. And again, it's, some people say Living Daylight, it's a bit complex, but it all works. When you look at it, it all works, and it's a clever sort of plot. I really like it. And then Bond does the thing, we have an old saying too, Yorgi, and you're full of it. And now that's very similar to, obviously, Man with the Golden Gun, opposite Scaramanga. He likes sort of, useful four-letter word and all that sort of thing, doesn't he? So he does like to say that quite a bit, which is pretty cool. So they arrive at the airbase. Cara gets Bond's keyring, which is cool. Koskoff meets his mate, Colonel Feodor, and basically said, right, I have here Pushkin's murderer, and hands over Bond. And then Cara's about to walk away, and he's like, wait, there's a second. She's a defector too. Slaps him across the face. And now there's a great bit where he basically mentions about he's going to have her assigned to the Siberian Philharmonic Orchestra. And the way that he says it, there's definitely an essence of Christoph Waltz in that.
Gee, I thought that as well when I watched it last time. Yeah, there's something in this delivery, isn't it? And they're quite good, despite their bourgeois repertoire. There's something
you could so easily.
Yeah.
I think, it's particularly from Inglourious, the Christoph Waltz character in Inglourious. He's got that sort of thing. But I think, Koskoff, your own Krabbe, I love him. I think he's great as Koskoff, and he's brilliant. Yeah. But I think the Christoph Waltz could have played that character and got a similar vibe from it, I think. I think, he can do that sort of charming, Weasley, sort of likeable but villainous character.
Those lighter-hearted moments where he's a bit chirpier, like, I told you! That stuff. You could see Christoph Waltz doing that as well, big time. Yeah, completely. I tell you what, this is an interesting bit for me. So remember we were talking about last time how this is different in the sense that we don't have that one main villain in this. We sort of have this sort of partnership, and both of them are kind of quite chirpy villains in the sense that, you've got Whitaker, who's sort of like almost got a bit of buffoonery in him and stuff, and when Pushkin asks for the money back, he's sort of like nervously laughing and stuff like that. And obviously Koskoff is very weaselly at the same time, and he tries to pretend that Whitaker's held him captive at the end and stuff like that. We don't have that one villain who's like total like stone cold badass at the end. Now I feel like we get a glimpse of that from Koskoff in this scene, because obviously he's got Cara there, who, you know, at one point was his girlfriend, and she's kind of gone along with that, and then he turns around and he's, you know, sends her to the Siberian Orchestra, and that's a very sort of dark side of him that you see there. And I feel like we could have had a little bit more of that. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I almost feel like we could have had the boss fight with Whitaker at the end, right? And then Koskoff comes. Instead of it being you know, you saved me and all that kind of stuff, it could have been more like the next boss fight, like Goldfinger coming back at the end after Oddjob's been defeated and all that kind of stuff. I feel like maybe that could have been something, I don't know, because you see that glimpse of darkness in him here, but then you do. Yeah, you don't really get that sort of big time payoff at the end. And no,
that's true. No, it is true. And I'm just trying to think what that would have been like. And if it would have worked, it could have definitely worked if they played up that side of him more. Because don't forget, he obviously wanted her dead initially, didn't he? He obviously asked for Bond to kill her, and then obviously hands her over. And he is dark there. And that moment in the hotel room where, you know, after she's just drugged Bond, he's dark there as well. So you do get moments where, you know, you can see that side of his character has that. So maybe a little bit more would have been interesting, but without it, it still makes his character quite an individual Bond villain, because, you know, we haven't kind of had that Bond villain before type, and the fact that he's a bit different maybe is a good thing. You know?
Absolutely.
So, who knows? So what do you think in this next scene? So basically, Bond and Cara get taken to this prison cell to this sort of dude that doesn't really sound very Russian.
I like this guy. I think he's great. Him for years. My two favourites are "Didn't say you could get up, didn't say you could get down." That dude, I like him. Yeah,
he is cool. He's cool. So basically, so he obviously is gonna tell Cara to strip, and she's like, "No," and all that sort of stuff. She drops a key ring. Bond bends down to pick it up, hits him. Gets up, hits him, and I like this now because Bond is quite clever here. So he obviously hands him the key ring. They get shoved in the cell. He does a little, and he goes, and the guards are obviously think this is brilliant. Yeah. So like they have a go, and then as they're doing it, Bond obviously does, and the stun gas comes out. So the one guard is knocked out completely. He's like, he's floored. And now earlier in the film, what I really like as well, earlier in the film, Q's like, it will knock out any normal person for 30 seconds or whatever it is. The jailer, within 5 seconds, he's up again because he's not a normal person. Yeah. You know this guy's a bit of a nutter, and I like that. And then the fight that follows is pretty cool. So Bond's obviously in handcuffs. He knocks over one guard. Then him and the jailer, you know, the jailer has his sort of truncheon or whatever it is against Bond's throat, and there's that metal spike that he tries to get him with. But what I like in this fight is that Cara helps out. So Cara gets that bucket and knocks the guard out. Cameron Shah helps out because he grabs his hand, doesn't he? And so there's a nice bit of teamwork going on here. And I like that. I really like it. And Bond does his classic double kick.
He does the old Roger Moore days.
Absolutely. He does. Yeah. He loves it. He's obviously...
There's proof enough that it is indeed the same character. That disproves the code name thing right there.
Definitely. So that's pretty cool. So the jailer obviously gets kicked in and locked in, and then the other guy gets locked in. So what did you think about the whole fight and everything?
It's cool. Did you enjoy it? It's nice. It's not like the Green Forte base fight in the first half with Necros, but it's like that bit where he's kind of got him over the desk and there's that spike that he's pushing his face down onto. That's like one of those eye sort of wincing moments, isn't it? And all that stuff. But I do love the payoff for that, where, you know, he gets the double boot, falls into the cell, locks him in the cell. And then I tell you what, man, I find myself so charmed by Cameron Shah, like how chirpy he is and happy to be released. He's he does that clap, like, come on, give me the keys.
I'm sure he gives him the bird. He does, doesn't he?
Yeah. I love that stuff. And then Bond throws him the keys. He's like, and then comes up. I love it. And that was an important move, because if he hadn't have let Cameron Shah out, he'd have probably got shot by the dudes camouflaged outside.
Completely, he would have done. But we also get one of the best lines and payback lines in the whole film, I think.
Go on.
Where they lock in the guards and Cara's like, "You were excellent, we're free." Or what is it? "You were fantastic, we're free." Cara, we're inside a Russian airbase in the middle of Afghanistan. There's
the ditziness right there, isn't there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where you see it, absolutely. And you also get it a little bit as they're sort of sneaking around the base as well. They put on the kind of the Russian military jackets, and she's sort of off in her own little world a bit, isn't it? He's sort of like skulking around trying to find a way out, and she's sort of off, just sort of wandering off, having a look about, isn't she?
Yeah. Well, like there's twice that she kind of, they're hiding. Bond sort of carries on to the next bit to scope out, and then realise she's still back there. So he goes back and grabs her and pulls her with her. Like he does that twice, which is quite interesting. Yeah. So they see Necros and Koskoff load the diamonds onto the truck, and then Bond notices that stairway, that stair truck thing.
Yeah.
So basically grabs Cara. They get on that, drive to the perimeter fence, the electrified fence, and jump over. And then, like you said, they're about to be killed by this sort of Afghan rebels. And luckily, Cameron sort of followed them, jumps over the fence and says, no, they're not Russians, they're not Russians.
Yeah.
So, obviously they're not killed then, and join them on horseback. Now, we'll have to, just very briefly now, okay, so this whole idea with the Afghan rebels.
Yeah.
And there is, what do you think about that whole thing where back in that it was the Russians against the Afghan rebels, the Americans and the West kind of backed the rebels, gave them arms, basically militarized them and everything like that.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, that sort of became, the new how do you pronounce it? Mujahideen. Yeah, sort of became at least part of the Taliban eventually.
Yeah.
And Osama bin Laden, in fact, I think he financed Arab enforcers to help the Afghans and stuff like that. So there is a link there.
Yeah.
So and I know obviously. Cameron Shah wasn't the number one, but he was part of that kind of group. So do you think what's your opinion on that side of things?
Well,
like Bond,
I suppose this sort of stuff is very much, part of everyday life now, isn't it? With all the sort of stuff that's going on in the world and all that kind of business. But Cameron Shah is such a likable dude. I would equate him to be like a Draco in the sense that they're not on the same side, but they're not specifically enemies either, in the sense that, Draco is Union Course and is a criminal organisation, and that would typically be somebody Bond would be opposed to, but they're kind of mates. So I think that kind of works. And it is kind of, it's sort of funny, isn't it, in the sense that you do get that crossover into real life as well, which doesn't happen all that much. That was sort of why Spectre was invented, I guess. So it wasn't like you could have an entity that was the bad guy that wasn't like a real thing to life. So what do you think? Would you want to see more of that? Do you want to see more of like real life events in a Bond film, or do you want to keep it more to that sort of like it's its own universe in a sense?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure, really. I suppose in that aspect, obviously, that was what was going on at the time. That was the war that was going on, the Russians versus the Afghans. I guess with a link to sort of everything that happens later, it doesn't really matter because that you can't predict the future. Yeah. So that's sort of by the by, really. But in terms of ongoing, Bond films have always had a link to. Some of them have been sort of prophesizing what is about to happen. Obviously, Dr. No with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and there's a lot of stuff that has happened in Bond films which have subsequently then happened. Okay, perhaps not Drax levels of human extermination.
Well, hey man, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. You don't know.
Well,
we just might not know about
there
it.
We go. Yeah. It's a Monsanto GM crops. I don't know if you. So obviously not, but there are some things which do mirror kind of what happens in the world, and I think obviously that's that means that the writers are on point, aren't they? And I think that's cool. Yeah. And I don't want things ever to be too. You don't want to concentrate on wars all the time, do you?
Yeah.
I think you just need change. I think you need change, which is what Bond is brilliant at. I want to see the odd megalomaniac. I want to see the odd sort of conglomerate business that's an evil organisation. I want to see, I would just want to see these sort of different sort of obstacles that Bond has to try and overcome.
I suppose the thing is it would be a disappointment, wouldn't it, to have a Bond villain who is just maybe like a random terrorist like we would have in real life, because that sort of if you've got one of those sort of like run-of-the-mill generic action movies, that's usually what your villain is, isn't it? In the 80s, it would have been the Russians, wouldn't it? It was always a Russian villain.
The Rambo's 3 or whatever it was.
And like nowadays, it's always going to be some sort of Middle Eastern fella or whatever, or somebody who's linked to that, who's planning something, and then the main hero goes against that. And I feel like that's not something Bond should get involved with, because that would feel a bit generic for me. I feel like you need something a little bit extra for your Bond villains, don't you? Or a lot extra, really.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Skyfall Spectre, lots of kind of techno terrorism, at least kind of basis. Obviously, we had Henry Kupta back in Tomorrow Never Dies. But in terms of obviously Silver with all of his network of being able to hack any system, you've got Spectre that's basically part of the Nine Eyes or whatever, being able to look into every computer system or all over the world or whatever it might be. I'd like Bond 25 to not concentrate on computer hacking type storyline if possible, because I feel like we've had that. And I want something completely different. I know in this modern day and age, it's hard to go against that. And I think maybe you can reference it a little bit, but I really want a storyline that, if possible, avoids that kind of thing.
It would. I tell you what would be nice. When I went to the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. a few years back, it took you through the entire history of spying, right back from like the ninjas in the olden days, like way, way back, all through to like the modern day. And the least interesting part of it was the modern day stuff, because it was all hacking and techno-terrorism and stuff, and it was just like, this is fucking boring. I want to go back to the secret passages and the secret gadget weapons from World War II. That's what I want. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like there is that thing. And so I think the good thing about that Spectre storyline with the Nine Eyes is that, okay, it's very current, because every few months in the news you'll find US government or somebody is trying to pass some law so they can spy on everybody's shit. And it's obviously very sort of current and quite worrying and all that kind of stuff. But then it gets to the point of you do need something else when it comes to Bond, don't you? Do you know what I mean? Bond is a special thing, and you need a little something different. It would be, go back to like Goldfinger's plan, for example, or something like that. I feel like I feel like they need to go in that sort of a direction where it's not to do with computers or some sort of satellite in orbit. Do you know what I mean? I feel like something a little different,
Hopefully that's what
it's so difficult, man. Though I feel like they don't get enough credit, because it's like, damn, the amount of movies that are out there these days coming out every single week, and it's like, how do you get that? How do you get that special thing that's worthy of Bond without retreading something else? And not understating it, not overstating it, and having a race of super zombies living in orbit. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you do it? So hats off to it.
Well, to be fair, the Mission Impossible franchise is doing it well. Is doing it very well. The recent Mission Impossibles have all been great. And I'm not saying Bond should take a leaf out of their book, because they're obviously the ones that are following Bond in a way. But it can be done. It's just got to be creative, and that whole storyline of how do you write a new Bond with everything that's going on that Purvis and Wade did. Maybe that was a smokescreen. Maybe they were just saying that to get people, just so they could get their own time to concentrate. Because, I mean, there will inevitably be an answer. It's just you've got to work hard.
Do you know what I would like to see? I would like to see a storyline like The Man with the Golden Gun, like we thought it was going to be. Golden bullet with Bond's number on it, and there's a dude who's one step ahead of Bond all the time, who's trying to kill him, and that's the story. And there's, you could totally do it on a smaller scale like that, where there's no massive plot to overtake the world. It's just like Bond versus some other dude, mano a mano, and actually do that story.
Maybe Bond has previously killed, I don't know, a member of his family or whatever it is, or whatever, and he's out for revenge. I don't know if that would work. But there needs to be something. I think something like that could work, definitely. But we'll see.
Anyway, we were talking about the Living Daylights, weren't we? We went off on one there for a good 20 minutes.
Sorry about that, folks. Sorry about that. Okay, so cutting back then. So where are we? Yeah, so basically they've joined Cameron Shah and his men. They go back to Shah's gaff. They get there's some really nice shots actually of them on horseback crossing the desert. Sun in the background, beautiful. There's a lot of lovely shots in daylight.
This was a Roger film. We'd have got some Lawrence of Arabia or something like that playing, wouldn't we? We'd have got that sort of style, but we didn't get that with Timmy this time, do we?
No. We didn't, no. Which I think works for this film, definitely. We see them go through the villages and like there's villages that have been torched and people killed. Like you see a dead body being the clothes taken off it, which is pretty dark, you know?
Very.
That is pretty dark. They get back to Shah's gaff. They get put up in this massive palatial room, which is pretty cool. And they look out the window at some old dude with a, you know, kicking someone on the ground, and I hope he's not invited to dinner and all that sort of thing, which is quite good. So they basically go and see Cameron Shah. They find out he's the deputy commander of the Eastern District, basically of the New. Oh my god, I can't even say it.
The Mujahideen, the Mujahideen, as Timmy says.
Mujahideen, that's it, Mujahideen. And I really like him tossing the keys back. You know, the prison keys back to Bond. That's a nice exchange. I thought that was really cool. So Bond, you know, Cara's told to go freshen up, and Bond and Shah talk about shot. Bond basically says, right, I need to get back to the airbase to get Koskoff, and everyone laughs at him and I work for the British government, They all think he's like taking the piss. But then Bond basically mentions about Koskoff's plan to buy the American high-tech weapons to use against Cameron and his men, and it's like, okay, this is important sort of thing. But Bond says, right, I need to go back to the airbase. They're like, no, we're off on an operation tomorrow. Come join us, then we'll help you out. And so basically, that he has no other option really. So he goes back to see Cara, and Cara says that she was scared for him, and he holds her hair and says, "Haista," beautiful in Afghan. And do you know what? I really like the Bond Cara relationship, and I think it progresses really well and it develops. And I don't think I've had as much appreciation for it in the past as I should do, really, because I really find them like developing well. You know, like Bond and Saunders, they start off and they're against, you know,
they're
no respect,
loggerheads.
Yeah, and then at the end of it, it's really nice. And I think the Bond-Car relationship sort of develops really well as well. And anyway, but yeah, I just think it's cool. So in this scene, go on.
Yeah, this one for me, I feel a little bit different to that. As I've often said, I don't get the Lover Man vibes from Timothy. And to be fair, there's not really any opportunity for it in Living Daylights. You get it at the very beginning, obviously. Who are you on the boat? Pre-title sequence. Yes, get in there. He looks like the man lying on the boat. And then there's not really any Lover Man stuff apart from the scene in the Ferris wheel, which we sort of said there's a little bit on the awkward side, isn't it, that one? And I'm not sure. And this one as well. And when she freaks out, hits him with a pillow, and he's like, "You calling me a horse's ass?" That to me doesn't feel cool. It feels a little bit awkward to me, that bit. And I think that's the sort of roots of my thoughts of Timmy not having the Lover Man vibes like you would get with Roger or certainly George and Sean. You know, it just doesn't quite come across for me, that.
No. I agree, but I think that's because the character of Cara is different to your usual sort of sexually fueled female.
Yeah.
Like that wouldn't have worked across Sylvia Trench or someone like that, or Xenia Onatop. So maybe he was adapting to the character of Cara to be like that, being a bit more.
It's a fair point, because he certainly didn't react like that to the lady on the boat at the beginning. So
no,
that is a fair
exactly.
Point. Yeah.
So I think maybe, but I do 100% see where you're coming from in terms of that. But maybe that's part of it. Who knows? So she calls him a horse's ass and stuff like that. And then they have a quickie, which is
lovely.
Always good,
always nice,
lovely. And then so next time is we see them on the desert op. So they've joined Cameron Shah. They find out about the Snow Leopard Brotherhood who've got all this dope, all this opium. And basically Bond has a go at Cameron for selling dope. I love the fact that he gets a knife, gets a little bit of opium, and like has a taste, and straight away he's like, raw opium. And you know, would you be able to do that, Tom? If you
I wouldn't have a clue. But I tell you what, I find this is interesting, right? I think on the one level, Fleming's Bond had probably messed around with that stuff at some point, I would have thought. You know what I mean? I feel like Fleming's Bond would have been into, you know, in his youth or something, he might have had a little sort of dabble in things like that, and that's maybe how he kind of how he knew. I don't know. What do you think?
Do you think there's ever a part of MI6 training where they're like, right, here's a selection of drugs, and
have a little taste.
Have a little sample of each one, like not enough to be, you know, too harmful or whatever, And that's what they're looking for. I don't know. I doubt it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's kind of cool, and a little bit different as well. In fact, actually, Necros does the same thing pretty soon afterwards, doesn't he? He sort of when Bond kind of has got his bag and Necros says halt, and he sticks a knife in and has a little go himself, which is quite cool. So basically, the plan here. I know we mentioned it last time, but the plan here. Okay, so the Russians are going to buy high-tech weapons from the Americans. They've given a down payment to secure those, which Koskoff has. So he uses that down payment from the weapons to purchase the diamonds.
Right.
Then he uses the diamonds to exchange for the opium with the Snow Brother Leopard, which he's then going to sell, make a huge profit, still use the money left over to buy the rest of the high-tech weapons, supply those to the Russians, and keep the profit left over. That's what.
Okay, so yeah, because we talked about this before, didn't we? Because it is a much more complex plot than we're used to, isn't it? This one, there's a lot going on, lots of little twists, and like we said, it's like you have to really focus because you could miss one line and then you've missed a thread, and then you're kind of left on the back foot a little bit, wondering, hold on, how does this link together? Which you could look at that and say, well, it's too complicated. You need to simplify it down. Or you could say, well, actually, it's a fucking intelligent plot that you've got to think about. So, get your brain in gear. Do you know what I mean? There's two ways you could look at it. And in this sort of proper Cold War thriller style, I think it suits the vibe, it suits the time, and that's cool. So I suppose in that scene earlier with Whittaker and Pushkin, where Pushkin's like, we know you have our $50 million in your Swiss bank account, it hasn't left. Yeah. Like, we want the money back. So at some point after that, they've gone and purchased the diamonds because we know it's in his bank account at that point.
Well, when that is when they go back and they're about to congratulate Necros for Pushkin's murder. Yeah. And then Whittaker says, tell Amsterdam to ship the diamonds. So that's the point that they purchase the diamonds.
There's a perfect example. I missed that line and I thought, I wonder when they purchased the diamonds then. And there it is. Yeah. If you're not really listening to every line, you can easily lose it. So, yeah, that's a perfect example of that. Nice one. Yeah. Look at you being all super on ball.
Sometimes. Yeah. So basically, Bond tells Cameron, right, he wants to stop him, and Cameron says, right, once the deal is done, fine, go for it. So Bond says he needs an explosive and a timer. So that's the point where he's on, he's got his sort of bag. Necros tells him to stop, and then Bond gets on.
I tell you what,
so what do you think about this bit?
This is cool, right? This is sneaky Bond, isn't it? We get a lot of sneaky Bond in this film, and he's in disguise. He's got the sort of like head, whatever, scarf on, I guess you'd call it, wrapped around his face. So he's got like the ninja vibe going on, hasn't he? And I tell you what I like about that is you get the fucking Timmy eyes being the focus. Those like wolfish eyes throughout that whole thing, and as he's sort of like skulking around, carrying those sort of sacks of whatever. That's all you see. That's all you focus is on those eyes, those deadly eyes, man. And I like it a lot.
They are class. They are good eyes.
Yeah,
they are good eyes on it. So he basically gets on the truck, goes sort of hides in the back a little bit, and he's got the explosives around his belt, which he basically takes out the opium and then puts the explosive in the bag, and they drive off. And Cara basically tells Cameron, Bond's trapped. You got to help him, and Shah's like, well, no, he's
not that bothered, is he?
Now. That's it. Yeah, he's like, he can look after himself, sort of thing, and have to take his chances. So then Cara basically steals Cameron's gun and goes off. Now she turns into a pretty badass. She basically chases after the Russians and Bond with just like one gun, and then we get the classic women, and then obviously they all chase after him as well. Which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. I have a funny Cameron Shah story, actually. A good friend of mine, Rashid, was on a train once and saw Art Malik sitting there reading a newspaper. And my friend Rashid is an actor, so he went to sort of like say hello and all the rest of it. And he went up to him and shook his hand and went, "Are you Omar Sharif?" Because he was so nervous. And he was like, "Oh, no, I'm Art Malik." He was like, "Oh."
Oh, you're joking. Oh, no.
How funny is that?
I thought if he had played that as a joke, I think it would have gone down quite well.
Yeah.
But, poor dude. Never mind.
Absolutely.
So they get back to the Russian airbase then. And I quite like that bit. So the guys jump on the back of the truck, start unloading the dope, and then suddenly Bond appears from behind them. They're like, huh? Where's he come from? And he obviously starts helping them. He's got make sure he gets the one with the explosives, gets off the Jeep, and basically Koskoff greets Colonel Fyodor as Bond's walking off, and that's it. So basically Bond goes onto the plane, doesn't he, and sets the timer 10.5 minutes. He's like, everything's set. While that's happening, one of the guards hears a horse and then sees Cara, and then suddenly he gets knocked out. So the others are ready to help out. Bond basically he's about to leave the plane, isn't he? Because the back door comes down. Yep. He's about to go out the side. Suddenly, Koskoff and Necros are there. So he grabs the guard's gun, knocks him down, and then kicks him onto Koskoff and Necros. Now, this is an interesting bit. He's basically got a machine gun in his hand. Yep. Koskoff and Necros are right in front of him. He ends up firing it in the air. What? He could have easily just taken them out. And the film would have finished. What do you think?
Yes, that is a good point. He wasn't very efficient there with his use of bullets. I guess you could have taken out the one of the main villains and the main henchman. I guess that would have made for a slightly less exciting climax. But
I think so.
I guess. But how could you have done that differently? I guess what you could have done is you could have. I suppose. It's tough because how would you have given that? I was going to say you could have had to say Colonel Fyodor see Bond, and then Bond shoots Fyodor, and then that would be obviously as soon as the gun's fired, that alerts everybody. But then Fyodor wouldn't know who Bond was, so it would have to have been Necros or Koskoff to see him, and you can't get rid of either of those characters yet. So I guess
unless there was another guard with them or something, I don't know. But by the by, I tell you what, you do get is you get a great shot of Bond. Like sort of a mid shot of Bond outside of the plane, firing his machine gun, and he looks at dogs there. He looks really good. That's a great shot. I love that. And basically, Koskoff and Necros go and sort of hide under this sort of truck thing as Bond's firing, and then we get a great bit. So Cameron Shah arrives in this digger. Bursts through the fence perimeter, knocks over this massive shower block, so we get loads of naked Ruskies.
Yeah, I noticed he does what Daniel does at Casino Royale when he lifts up the scooper or whatever you would call it, and then
the digger bucket or something.
Whatever it is, and it's the same sort of move that Bond pulls in Casino Royale.
That's nice. Yeah. So do you think they did that in Casino Royale too? In Skyfall as well on the train with the digger bucket.
That's true. He likes a digger bucket, doesn't he?
Yeah. He loves it. He loves a digger. Cool. There we go. And then it's quite cool. So there are those guards in the sort of gun barrack thing, and they chuck a hand grenade, and he catches it, and then sort of basically, jumps out, and the digger sort of blows it up. So that's quite cool. And then all the guys arrive on horseback. Now we get a pretty cool gunfight now, don't we? We get obviously the Afghan rebels with the machine guns. You get all the Russians. What's your opinion of this kind of climax as a whole? Are you a fan of it? What do you think?
Well, I think. I would say, just to touch back on that concept of the second half not being quite as strong as the first half. This second half is classic Bond in the sense that there's the big climactic battle. You've got a group of good guys against a group of bad guys, and I like that. That's really cool. We haven't seen that. The only thing missing is the matching overalls. Obviously, that would have been nice to touch. But I would say, do you think it feels Bondian? That's what I would say. Maybe this second half is lacking a little bit. And like I say, it's difficult because you have all those tropes usually in the first half of the film. And it's if a film is going to sort of, I'm not saying this is, but if a film is going to fall apart, like Never Say Never Again, for example, great, and then the last half is like, a lot of people say the same about Spectre, for example. If it's going to go, it's probably going to go at the end, isn't it? In the climax sequence. So what do you think? How do you think this plays out? Do you think this big climactic battle is great? Do you think it's lacking something? Do you think something could have been done different? What do you reckon?
There is something, like, I enjoy it. I think it's good. But there's something lacking. I can't put my finger on what. I don't know what it is. Like, if you compare it to Spy, the La Paris battle, where you've got the classic good versus villain army. Yeah. You've got your matching overalls or whatever. I think in this one, I guess because you don't see the Russians kind of do anything too bad. You see a couple of the Cameron Shah's men fall off horses, but you don't see a lot. Thinking of Spy, for instance, you see a load of the good guys get killed as well. Yeah. Whereas in this, I don't think from memory, I don't think you get a lot of that. You do get some cool things though, like you get various things blowing up and exploding, and they've got those sort of rocket launcher guns, which are pretty cool. I do like it, but I do agree there's something I can't put my finger on it, but there's something that is not quite as fulfilling to me as watching a Spy or a You Only Live Twice or whatever.
Do you know
in
what I
terms
think
of that
it might be?
Final battle.
If it's not the matching uniforms, overalls, right, which I do feel is important, it might be a lack of a monorail. It also might be a lack of any kind of coherent base. You know, in the sense that that's on a Liparis, which is, you know, it's that. I mean, that's an all-time classic set, that one, isn't it? You know, you've got the climax at Fort Knox. You've got, you know, climax in the volcano. They're all in very unique settings, aren't they? Those ones on the fucking Drax's space station. You know, whereas this is sort of like a random airstrip in the middle of the desert. So I guess it's in terms of it being a Bond film, the setting of that battle, I guess, isn't in as grand a location as we used to. No. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. What do you think?
Maybe, yeah. No, maybe. I think you could have something there. It's certainly different. Anyway, it certainly feels different to a lot of the sort of former battles. But it is still great. So Bond, you know, he kicks away the stepladder. He goes to start up the plane. Cameron's men and everything, they obviously all battle. Koskoff tells Fyodor to block the runway because he sees Bond trying to get over, and you see the wheels try to get over those blocks, doesn't he? And it takes him a couple of goes before he does it, and I think that's quite cool. There's a really funny bit actually where the plane. So he gets over the blocks, and Koskoff is running after the plane, and he almost gets in, and he sort of falls down. And then you see the propellers of the plane, sort of the blast back of that, I think it must be, kind of knocking over one of the guards, and Necros, and they kind of fall to the ground, and then they kind of like roll over, and it's a little bit comedic, but in an interesting way. I think it's meant to be the blast of the propellers and knocking them down,
right?
But then Koskoff gets up and he's running, and he's like. Not affected by it at all.
I have noticed that, so that's one of those little details I'm going to have to go and investigate and have a little look at. Yeah, interesting.
It is quite funny. Yeah. But then we get to that point where basically what happens? Oh yeah, then the guard tries to attack Cara. Again, this is where she turns into a badass, punches him, kicks him away. We see her, and she's really good right on a horse.
Is that when she's in the Jeep and the dude's hanging off the front bonnet of the Jeep?
In a minute, yeah. So she's on the horse initially, knocks over the guy. She an explosion goes, and she sort of falls off. Then she gets on this Jeep, and she's like, Koskoff and Necros get on another Jeep with a machine gun, and she's swerving away from the bullets. Sees Bond. She obviously drives after him, which is great. And we get one of your favourite lines. So we get Colonel Fyodor goes up to the guy in the truck.
Oh, somebody! I love that one.
And that is pretty cool, isn't it? I do like that. And I remember you stumped me on that. And I
did. That was one of my quote of the days, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was a good one. And then obviously he gets in that, and a hand grenade drops, and that blows up, which is pretty cool. So then we get to the point where Cara is basically driving alongside Bond, and this bit is great as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So she's kind of waving at him, and Bond's like, right, go around the back, go on.
Yeah.
And she's like, huh? He's like, go around the back, go on. It's like, go around the back, go on. And you can just see him getting frustrated.
Yeah, I love that. That's some real genuine frustration coming from Bond there. I love the bit where he sort of like loses his temper, and he sort of like looks away, looks out the other side of the window, and you can see him thinking, it's fucking stupid bitch, come on. Like, do you know what I mean? I love it. Really nice.
It is cool. And then she obviously realises what's going on. She ends up driving around the back, and the back of the plane drops down. She drives on, and then you see Koskoff and Necros driving the Jeep, and they're getting closer and closer. And then obviously this other plane is coming into land, and you're like, shit. And just as the plane sort of touches down, you see Necros jump off the Jeep, and you see Bond pull up, and obviously just misses a plane.
Of course, one of the classic pulling up at the last minute sort of typical things that Bond does. You know, we have a bit that in GoldenEye, a bit that Tomorrow Never Dies.
Definitely.
There's several of them throughout the series, and we've got one. I would say this is probably the biggest vehicle he's done that in so far.
Yeah.
But
I suppose Octopussy a little bit, the Aquastar jet to a certain extent as well.
Now, I tell you what I like about this, right? So obviously we don't quite know it yet, but Necros has sort of jumped up. It's suggested, isn't it, that, you know, something's not quite right. Necros has obviously climbed on board. They're kind of flying along. Bond tells Cara to take the controls, which I'm not sure I'd feel particularly safe with Cara at the controls of that particular vehicle, but, you know, whatever. what I like about this is that we've got a classic Bond fight in a crazy place, in the sense that, again, this is one of those things that makes Bond so special, is that you don't have a fight in just a random spot. You've got a fight on top of a cable car hanging over the top of Rio de Janeiro or something like that. Do you know what I mean? At the top of a fucking massive satellite dish in Goldeneye, in one of those like outrageous places. Like this is, I suppose it's not that outrageous, but it kind of is. Once you're at the back of the plane, it becomes outrageous, totally. And it's a nice frantic fight, isn't it? You've got a dude who probably physically outclasses Bond, and the way it starts is very much like Necros likes to do. He hasn't got his headphones to hand, so he's going to use a bit of net. Gets it around his face and neck and stuff, and a bit of strangulation and all that kind of stuff.
And Timmy looks bad, like Bond looks bad. That net's like really pushing against his face.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? In the sense that with a lot of Bonds, you could be forgiven for sort of thinking that they would never break a sweat. For example, you could look at some of Roger's Bonds and say, like, no matter what's going on, the eyebrow's always raised and he's always cool and doesn't even break a sweat. Whereas Timmy isn't afraid to look a bit fucked up, is he? Which is nice, and you do have his face all like spread against the net and stuff, which is a nice touch. It makes it feel more deadly. And like I say, he's physically outclassed, so that sort of raises the game a little bit. Then Cara, she thinks, I'm going to help out. I'm going to get stuck in here. I can see something's going on back there. I'm just going to pull this lever. I don't know what it does. Going to pull the lever. That makes the situation 1,000 times worse.
It's because it says down. So I think she thinks if she pulls it down, the plane will go down and she'll be able to land again. Or so. That's what I'm assuming she's thinking.
Yeah.
But just prior to that, there's only one thing we have to mention is obviously as they take off in the plane, the other one lands. Koskoff then drives into that other plane's wing, doesn't he?
Yes.
Because there's that cool bit where he's driving along and there's basically a wing on the Jeep. He obviously jumps out and then the Jeep blows up and then he's looking up at the plane going away.
Yeah.
Something we've got to mention about, but yeah. So the fight happens. It's really sort of hardcore. It's a good battle. Obviously, she pulls the lever down. Not only that, to open the back door, she then thinks, I know, I'm going to pull up. So then the plane starts going in a vertical climb almost, or, at least starts to climb. So the net, there's that cool bit where the net just slips out and Bond and Necros jump on the net.
Yeah,
the
there's that frantic dive of like, whoa, and they it's nice,
But the visual that you get of a massive plane, the cargo net, those two guys hanging on, the mountain range far below, it looks breathtaking.
Yeah.
It really does. One of the best stunt sequences, one of the best sequences for sure.
Yeah.
It just looks amazing. So they're obviously trying to outdo each other, trying to knock each other off. It's very difficult to do because obviously they're trying to hang on as well. Necros has this sort of a knife, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Which he tries to stab Bond. Bond gets a knife. Bond punches Necros through the net. So it is kind of like 50-50 at one point. But Bond then cuts the cargo net, so all the bags fly out and it starts to flap up and down, and things get a bit harder. And basically, it gets to the point where he goes to kick Necros, and Necros hangs onto his boot.
Yeah.
And now this bit I think is really cool. So I love the music here as well. So Bond, he gets a knife.
Yeah, here it comes.
He cuts the first few, cuts the middle lot, and he's got one little lace left, and he's like, cut, and then he drops. Obviously, that shot of Necros hanging onto the boot with that classic scream.
That is the Wilhelm scream, isn't it? Is that a Wilhelm?
It's the Bond version of it. So the Wilhelm scream is different, but it's very similar, but I think it is the Bond spin on it. So it's the same thing that we get in Octopussy with Gobinder. It's the same thing we get, I think, in loads.
Is that not the Wilhelm scream then? I thought that was the Wilhelm scream, that one we hear.
It is, but it's got more to it. It's the equivalent of John Barry orchestrating the James Bond thing. That is the equivalent of it.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So it is the same thing that they use, when the guy in Majesty's flame throws the baddie. That's, I think, the first time we hear it in the Bond. But yeah, it's the same thing that we hear a lot. So, I mean, that's classic. We see him flying off. And then the next going real apeshit, and Bond basically almost gets flipped into the back, doesn't he? And obviously...
What I like about this is obviously that's a frantic fight in a crazy place. And it's very striking. Some of that photography is amazing, seeing them hanging out the back of that plane like that. And then especially like it's not over yet, in the sense that once he's got rid of Nikros, it's like, okay, I need to get back in this plane now. And like you say, the net starts going mental.
It almost hits like the back of the plane as well.
It does look nice.
Dangerous.
It does look dangerous, yeah. And so you've got that bit, and the way he doesn't land gracefully. It's like a mad scramble, and then after that, he's just trying to catch his breath, and then you hear the tick 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 tick.
That's great
of the bomb, and it's like fuck, and then he's frantically searching through that before he kind of manages to turn it off at the last second. So
2 seconds to spare.
2 seconds to spare, yeah. And it's that's frantic, and it doesn't end. Because it doesn't end, because he goes in. Cara's not even looking where she's going. She's flying directly into a cliff or a mountain or whatever that thing is in the distance.
What is she doing?
And it's just like, fucking hell, the dude can't catch a break, you know? And then, of course, frantic pull up. Just missed the thing. Yeah. And of course, then you can have a little bit of a breather, I think, at that point.
Yeah, you're like, whew. That's it. And then basically they're flying back. They see then the Russian tanks basically overpowering Cameron Shah and his men on the horses and stuff like that. And then Bond's right, this time keep her steady, all right? Whatever you do, keep her steady.
And keep your eye on where you're going as well.
Yeah. You see this window, look for it, Look for it. Hands on the wheel, look for it. And basically he says he's going to go drop a bomb. So he obviously finds it. Drops a bomb out. There's that cool shot of them crossing the bridge, which, as we all know, visually, optics on it was great. Yeah. I think it was a foreground or a matte painting or something. But yeah, brilliant. He drops a bomb on it, blows up, superb. We see the Russian tanks drop down.
That's something that definitely needs to mention is the model work, because you don't see a lot of that these days, do you? And that bridge sequence with the big explosion and all that kind of stuff, that's some great model work, man. Yeah, I miss that stuff.
It really is. I know, I kind of do. I know we had some good model work on GoldenEye. Obviously CGI definitely works with certain things, but model work, there's something about it that just looks great, doesn't it? It just looks kind of real, really. Yeah. More real a lot of the times. But that bridge is brilliant. Obviously, it blows up. The tanks go down. Cameron Shah and his men are like, "Hey!" They're all celebrating, and Bond tips his wings and stuff, and then flies off. And then you get the classic fuel gauge alarm. And I love it. In every film that you see, Temple of Doom, whatever it is, whenever they always tap the fuel gauge, don't they? They always tap the fuel gauge just to see. And obviously, Bond says they've been hit. They're losing fuel fast, and then you get the classic propellers sort of slow down and then stop. And he's like, fuck, there's nowhere to land.
Now, this is one of those things, like in Majesty's when he's hanging off the cables and the cables getting closer and closer and closer. He's trying to get away. And then all of a sudden, bang, he just appears like a couple of meters down the line holding onto the top of the thing. You're like, how did he do that exactly? That's a bit, but you go with it, There, we do have a similar issue here where he's like, there's nowhere to put down. There's literally fucking mountains everywhere. There's no flat ground. But then they just sort of magically find a bit of flat ground, and then they just sort of land it more or less safely, don't they, before they jump out the back of the Jeep?
Well, do you know what I think they could have done if they could have done it? So looking how it happens on film, I do like the idea of getting in the Jeep, pulling that parachute deploy, flying out the back, great. And then suddenly the aeroplane must have gained elevation from somewhere, because then we see it crash again. Yeah. I think what they could have done was do that same thing, but have the Jeep sort of deploy, like go out the back while they're still really high up, but the parachute is what slows them down. Maybe it almost has a double parachute, one on either side.
See, what they really needed was to have a helicopter in the back of the plane, which they get out and then sort of drive that out the back and then turn that on halfway down. There we go. Stop just before they hit the ground. They're about that would have been better,
exactly.
I think. Yeah.
That would definitely have worked. Yeah, that should have worked. But I think, maybe having like this thing with the Jeep parachuting down or whatever, and then seeing the plane crash would have been better. But, it is what it is. And I do like the bit where they drive through the barrier and obviously it frees a Jeep. Yeah. They see the plane crash, and then there's that great bit, obviously with they see the signs, don't they? The road signs. You're like, oh, I know a great restaurant in Karachi. We'll just make dinner.
I like.
That is class.
I like that.
Yeah,
that to
is
me
classic.
Is classic Bond there. I like that line, and I remember it and it makes me smile. I remember I went to visit my brother in Dubai last summer, and we flew over Karachi, and you can see the map on the back of your seat, and it shows you where you are.
Didn't you take a photo of it?
I did take a photo of it, because it was Karachi, and I think I probably added that as the caption as well. And nice. I just annoyed my missus for a couple of hours by saying, I know a great restaurant in Karachi a couple of hundred times, as you do. But yeah, I like that. That's nice. That's a nice sort of bonding moment. I can hear Sean saying that. I can hear Roger saying that. I can hear George saying that. I can hear them all saying that. Really, that's a nice classic. Yeah. There's been a lot of tension, a lot of shit going on. And then I'm going to break that tension with a nice little quip, and we're going to drive off together. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I do. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. So then from there, we cut to Bond. He's in sort of the grounds of Whittaker's villa. Light is sort of guiding him through. He's got his little earpiece and he's telling him where the guards are. We get a classic John Glenn Dove moment. He scares him, which is great. Obviously, you've got to have one of those. Bond sort of punches out the guards. Enters Whittaker's villa, so he's got that corridor of commanders, with his face on. Now, this is interesting. Okay, so we get to the point where he goes in, sees Whittaker playing toy soldiers, the sort of flashes are going on, the little guns and smoke and all this sort of stuff. What do you think of this as a scene and as sort of a battle against a main villain? What's your opinion on this? So are you firmly in the camp that that Whittaker is the main villain? I don't know.
So here are my thoughts. I love all this. I feel like that stuff about this madman being obsessed with old school battles and replaying them, how he would have fought them, is something exactly like what Fleming would have written about one of his characters. Like, I feel that. That feels Fleming to me. I like the fact that he's got all those statues in his corridor, like in his sort of entrance hall. Like, that to me, I could feel like I'd read that in a Fleming book. I love it. And I feel like there's that feeling that we both get that we're not sure who the main villain is, or even if there is a main villain, they're a partnership, Koskoff and Whittaker, and that's that. Part of me thinks, okay, maybe we should have seen a dark, even more of a dark side to Koskoff, and that would establish him as the main villain because he is the last one left alive. Yeah. But then Whittaker, I think Whittaker is the missed opportunity there, because he had all of that amazing character stuff with his obsession with old battles and famous generals and all that kind of stuff. And I just feel like he was too much of a buffoon to kind of really capitalize on that. And I feel like if we'd have had, like, this sequence is great. I like the whole kind of face off between the two of them, and, his pop gun against the late's body armor and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like, I don't know whether it was just, you needed a different actor who was perhaps a lot darker than Joe Don Baker was, and just sort of played it differently. I don't know whether it was that or not. Go on, what are you going to say?
Or maybe if his character flipped. So basically, I think Koskoff has more darker moments as a character than Whittaker. Yeah. Although he doesn't have many, I think you see that side to him more than you do with Whittaker. I think when Bond comes in, he's got Whittaker at gunpoint, basically said he's here for Koskoff, and Whittaker's like, you can have him as long as I get my dope. Bond says it's gone up in smoke. And then you see Whittaker kind of go, okay. Then he's not happy. Yeah. But I think that could have been even more so, sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm all into that Christoph Waltz thing where you've got the happy-go-lucky guy who's cracking jokes and then fucking flips and turns into a proper psycho. I feel like that's what I want from Whittaker, I think. Like, if you're going to have him being like the sort of like chirpy guy like he is, I feel like, but in terms of some of the backstory, like of him being thrown out of whatever military sort of group he was with, I can't remember.
West Point for cheating, wasn't it?
All that kind of stuff. I feel like you need. I need for that to be like a true Fleming feeling character. I feel like I need a real dark side to Whittaker, and I don't think we really get it.
You know what? I think in this scene, so I think certain bits I love. I love all the flashing lights. I love, he presses the button, the tray hits Bond's legs, pushes him back. He gets that mini Uzi and starts flaring. I love the fact that how quick the bullets fly out and the muzzle sort of and the muzzle flare. It just looks deadly and it sounds deadly, shattering glass. Bond's legging it and this mini Uzi's firing. Then he gets out his Colt Commando thing with the body armor and I am a bit disappointed in Bond here. So Bond does 3 shots. They hit this bulletproof shield. At that point, I would have thought to myself, right, let's aim for the stomach. Let's get a leg shot. Let's aim for, anything that's not around that. He's got 8 shots, Tom. He does 3 initially quite rapidly. Fine. Then he thinks, right, I know, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going, and he ends up firing all 8 shots off this bulletproof shield, and it's like that. I was a bit disappointed in. I don't know. I think he was a bit. I think he should have clued in a bit more.
That is one of those things where they say if you want a different result, you got to try something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas, that wasn't the greatest move.
No.
Really?
Maybe should have fired something else to hit him, because I love the bit where obviously Whitaker's tracking him and Bond's kind of hiding, and then he presses the button and there's that mini cannon, and the little model just lights and fires a cannon and Bond blows. I think that's really cool. And then Bond obviously ends up hiding behind the bust of Wellington. He sticks obviously the keyring on the back, and he waits and he's listening, and Whitaker's approaching, and then obviously it blows up. Yeah. The bus hits Whitaker and kills him. He's knocked out on one of his toy soldier mats.
That is a poetic ending for Whitaker, isn't it? Which makes me think that it was perhaps intended that he was the main villain, because he gets the big death scene, and obviously Koskoff doesn't even die at the end. He's like the one villain, apart from Blofeld at the end of Spectre, who gets carted off and arrested rather than killed.
I'll come back to that in a moment. I've got something about that. First, just with the Whitaker thing, I think the death bit is great. I think the battle is interesting. It's good. I think if Whitaker hadn't spoken in that, and rather than because I think it was him chatting to Bond during the fight, which is what made you think that Bond's never really in danger. That's what stopped that dark side. So maybe if he'd been a bit more silent or channeled a darker thing, that might have. Do
you know what I think it is? I think it's Joe Don Baker choosing to play him as that sort of happy-go-lucky guy, and he does that bit where he's kind of laughing during the battles, and he's like as he's shooting him and stuff. I perhaps think Brad Whitaker shouldn't have been an American. I feel like Brad Whitaker should have been like a Colonel Kuznetsov or something like that, who was like a nasty, evil Russian, or your typical villains from that period. You'd have like a nasty sort of like Karl Mortner Nazi kind of sort of history guy, or a Russian or something like that. I feel like he's too. I'm not scared of Brad Whitaker. Do you know what I mean? No. I don't find him particularly threatening, and I think that's a shame.
That's what it is, I think.
And I think with all of that history, man, and his obsession with the old school battles is such a cool idea. I just feel like it was kind of lost on that character in a sense a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. It would have been interesting to see an alternative version, maybe. Yeah. But there we go. So obviously Whitaker's dead. One of the guard comes in. He's about to shoot Bond, and Pushkov luckily gets him first.
Pushkov, there he is.
Pushkov, there he is.
There he is. At the
Koskins
last minute.
and Pushkov, they are brilliant, aren't they? Pushkov. Okay, so obviously, I'm scared to say his name now. Pushkin comes in, obviously fires the other guard, and Bond, he tells Bond that he owes him that one. And now this is interesting. So Koskoff comes in and he basically, thank you, General, thank you, tells him that Pushkin's been, Whitaker's been holding him hostage for all this time. Yet Bond is right there and knows he's completely bullshitting, and he gives Bond the eyes. He's waiting for Bond to say something, but Bond doesn't say anything. Then we get to the bit where obviously he's like Georgi, put him back on a plane to Moscow, and thank you, General, thank you, and then obviously in a diplomatic bag. Now, there are two ways you can look at this. I've always thought, so some of the listeners, there's one of the JBR listeners, Jack McMurray, said that basically that means that he's going back to be executed. Mm-hmm. So I've always thought that, particularly as Pushkin's quite, he's not a demonizing character. He's quite like a warm character. I always thought he was being sent back to be incarcerated. Right. So basically, he was going to be put in jail. But I've heard quite a few people say both sides to the coin. So some people saying, he's going to be put back into jail, and other people say, no, he's definitely going back to be executed. What's your opinion on that?
I always assumed he'd just been arrested. So first of all, I think the important question is, what is a diplomatic bag? Now, I've just jumped onto Google's there and I've typed in, what is a diplomatic bag? And here is the definition thanks to Wikipedia. And A diplomatic bag, also known as a diplomatic pouch, is a container with certain legal protections used for carrying official correspondence or other items between a diplomatic mission and its home government or other diplomatic, consular, or otherwise official entities. And the accompanying picture is a load of passports. So the question is then, what does he mean by putting him in the diplomatic bag? Does that mean, in fact, hold on, the physical concept of a diplomatic bag is flexible and therefore can take many forms, e.g. a cardboard box, briefcase, duffel bag, large suitcase, crate, or even a shipping container. So that, to me, suggests that maybe they're going to shoot him and stick him in a box and fly him home. What do you think about that?
Yeah, maybe. No, I think both... potentially both work. I think the reason that I've not kind of gone with the execution idea is mainly on the character of Pushkin, because I found him quite warm. But then in reality, the most likelihood is that he would have been shot and then sent back.
Okay, I've got more, Chris. I've got more.
Okay,
are you ready for it? More? Okay, so noteworthy shipments in the diplomatic bag. So during World War II, Winston Churchill reportedly received shipments of Cuban cigars by this means. In 1964, and this is the interesting one, in 1964, any good films come out that year, Chris, do you know?
I can think of maybe one or two. Yeah. One in particular.
A Moroccan-born Israeli double agent named Mordecai Ben Masoud Luke, also known as Joseph Dahan, was drugged, bound, and placed in a diplomatic mailing crate at the Egyptian embassy in Rome, but was rescued by Italian authorities. The box that he had been sealed into had almost certainly been used before for human cargo, including possibly for an Egyptian military official who had defected to Italy several years before, but then disappeared without a trace before reappearing under Egyptian custody and facing trial. So that sounds the ballpark we're in, doesn't it?
But does that mean that he was going to be shipped back in one of those to then be incarcerated, or what?
That is a good question.
I think it works either way.
I guess it does.
Don't know.
Yeah, it's not clear, is it? Essentially, it could be either. It could be either. Yeah.
What you just go with whatever one flicks your switch, and that's the answer. Hey?
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go.
But we've never heard from Koskoff again, have we? So maybe that could be the return for Bond 25. We could see some Koskoff action again. You never know.
Get your own Krabbe back. Yeah. Or Christoph Waltz is Blofeld is. Hans Oberhauser is General Koskoff.
Indeed, that would have been a reveal, wouldn't it? People would have loved that one.
Hell, yeah. Okay, so then we go from there. The last we've seen of Pushkin, obviously, when Bond asks him about Cara. Pushkin, great character, loved him, brilliant. Next time we see Cara's playing cello in a concert, and we see the bullet hole in the Lady Rose, which I think is really cool. And we get a brilliant, nice little cameo by our main man, Mr. John Barry,
which is
obviously cool to see.
And that's poignant as well, because it's his last score, and to have the final scenes of that movie feature him as well. And of course, you probably didn't know it was his last one at the time, so that's a nice little send off for him, isn't it? It's kind of like Q's last scene, Desmond Llewellyn's last scene. You didn't know that was really going to be his last one, but it was the perfect send-off for him.
Definitely, yeah. So, 100%. I think it was great to see him in here. So the concert finishes, everyone's sort of celebrating Cara, saying how good she is, and then M basically takes her to meet General Gogol. And I'm really happy that he turned up, because obviously the character Pushkin was going to be for Gogol initially, but Walter Gotell was, he was taken ill, so he couldn't do it. But it was nice to see him. Obviously, that's his last film as well, so it's good to see his little appearance at the end. So he's not working for the KGB anymore. He's part of the Russian Foreign Service, so he can arrange for a passport or visa for Cara to go in and out, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
So I really, it's nice to see Gogol again.
Yeah, he warms my heart, man. Even though he works for the other side, I feel I imagine if you went out with Gogol and you had a few vodkas or whatever, you would have a good time. I feel like he's obviously capable of some dark stuff, because that comes with the territory, but I feel like he'd be a welcoming kind of person in terms of that. Yeah.
Definitely, I think so. And then we get Cameron Shah and his men turn up in their battle dress with like bullets everywhere. And this is quite good, because he apologises to Cara for being late. They had trouble at the airport. And then we get a nice bit of sarcasm from M.
Yeah.
Can't
imagine why.
Yeah. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
So M's a bit of a sarky git, isn't he? But in a nice way, which is good. And then he mentions to Cara that Bond's on an assignment unhappily, so he can't be there. Cara returns to her dressing room. She sees 2 vodka martinis and then goes, and we hear.
Yeah.
So do you think Bond had a spare key ring? I'm guessing he must have done.
Yeah.
And if so, if she had gone, would he have blown up?
That would be that's good. It's a good question. Or if she'd have done Rule Britannia, it could have it could have been an embarrassing little.
She would have been playing by herself for the rest of the night, wouldn't she?
Indeed, yeah. That's got to be scary to have an explosive on you like that, where you could just be walking down the street and some random dude decides to start whistling Rule Britannia as he walks past you, and then that's it, game over.
And then that's it, game over. Yeah, I think I'd go for a more sort of personal whistle tone. I don't know what that would be yet. Maybe the Bond theme, maybe the Majesty's theme.
Maybe you can work on that and let us know next time what your little tune will be.
Cool, will do. So then Bond, he basically says, you didn't think I'd miss this performance, did you? They start macking out and we get the James.
And then we hear, if there was a man, bit of Pretenders for us at the end there. Lovely. What do you think about that?
Brilliant. I love it.
Very nice.
Great.
So
Daylights 2. What do we think? Second half and Daylights as a whole.
Okay, second half. I would say there's definitely some truth to the thought that the second half isn't as strong as the first half. Not to say it's bad by any means, but I feel like it's, again, the challenge there is how do you keep it's easy. You've got the Bond car chase, you've got the cello chase, and all those kind of like stark, sort of like strong sequences in that first half. And then with the second half, you've got sort of some skulking around an airbase. You've got the big battle on an airbase with the bridge, and then a fight in a plane, and then the showdown at the villa. And those are all very sort of like normal settings. And I the more I think about it, the more I think perhaps that is the root of that, in the sense that there's nothing wrong with the scene, there's nothing wrong that it happens, but I think where it happens is just a bit unremarkable. And I think if you had some sort of unique base out there in Afghanistan or something, that could have sort of taken things up a level a little bit, because we've seen sort of big battles on air bases a billion times over the years, haven't we? So I feel like that's perhaps where it is. But in terms of story and all that kind of stuff, I think it's solid. I think it's great all the way through. Like I say, in terms of something I'd like to see a bit different, I think, again, the more I think about it, I think Whittaker is the weak link of the chain there in terms of the villainy. I feel like I said, he's got a great sort of backstory in terms of the previous old school battles and stuff. I just feel like it was a bit of a missed opportunity. I feel like you needed it.
Like, you couldn't imagine him slapping Bond, could you? Like, you couldn't imagine him just getting annoyed and slapping Bond for whatever. You just couldn't see him doing it, could you?
And you know what Bond villains like to do, where it's like they get their two sort of like subordinates and he makes out he's going to kill one of them, but it's actually the other one. I can't even really see him doing that. I feel like he's just too friendly. And of course, Koskoff is kind of friendly and chirpy as well. So for me, I feel like that could have been developed a bit more. I think Whittaker was a bit undercooked. I think that's my thoughts. Go on. What's your thoughts of the second half, and then tell me what you think of it as a whole.
Okay. Well, I think the first scene of the second half, pretty much, where he's in that hotel with Pushkin, real Fleming-like. That's one of my favourite scenes in the whole film. I think that's brilliant. I do agree that it's still really good. I still enjoy it. There's still a lot of good stuff in there. I like the end battle. I'm still not 100% certain on what it is. It's not quite flicking my switch. I still think it's a lot of good fun. I think
there's something to be clear about. Is it's not that you don't enjoy it. It's like it's not like you're sitting there saying, it's shit, the film falls apart. No. We're not saying that at all. It's not just like I feel like there's just that little ingredient missing in there to make it a great sort of memorable sequence. Yeah. And I think there's so much memorable in the first half that there's not as much memorable in the second half, and I think it suffers a little bit for that. I think. Yeah.
I think so, yeah, probably. But no, I think it's great. I think Daylights is great for characterization between Bond and Saunders, Bond and Cara to a certain extent, like I mentioned. I love the sort of I think Koskoff is great. These villains are different, we've not seen villains like that before. I think there is, aside from Necros, there is definitely a feeling that you're missing a bit of evil, a bit of menace in the film. I think Koskoff maybe has that within him. but we only see it infrequently.
Yeah.
Whitaker, like you said, I'm just not threatened by him. But he is fascinating, and his weapons and everything fascinating. But like, there's no threat there really, or at least you don't really think so. But as a film, I mean, Daylight's superb. I loved it when I was young. It was one of my favourites. I think I'd find it difficult to. I'd imagine in most Bond fans' opinions, Daylights would be in their top 10. Yeah. I know it's in the top 5 of a lot of people, maybe in the top 3 of a lot of people. But I think the top 10, you'll rarely see a top 10 Bond fan list that doesn't have Daylights. I'm sure, obviously, there are people with them, but I think it is a solid Bond film. And I think, like we said, the first half's amazing. I think of all, the pre-titles, the ice chase with the car, with the Aston, all that sort of stuff. Mate,
is just, again, I've watched it a few more times since we did the last episode, and it's just brilliant. It's really perfect, is. It is. So do you know what it is? People often say Back to the Future is the perfect film because there's so many little threads in there that all tie up perfectly. And I would say that it would be impossible to make Back to the Future a better film. And I feel the same about the pre-title sequence to Living Daylights, is that it's just such a, like, when you look at the context of what it's doing, it's introducing the new dudes. You've had Roger, who's been in the role for donkeys, and then you've got this new dude in it's like, a refresh, reintroducing this new dude, playing this classic character. And it ticks every single box you could possibly have. It really does. Yeah. And I the more I think about it, I love the Spectre pre-title sequence. I love Goldfinger. I love GoldenEye's pre-title sequence. But I think that one is perhaps my most favourite of all of them, I think. Yeah. I think it does have the crown. At this moment, we'll see when we finally get through all the films. But I think that's the one for me, I think.
Definitely. And I the other things that Daylights do brilliantly, the soundtrack, I think we've got to be mentioned. Obviously, it's Barry's last one. That synth that he used in it, I think there's so many good music cues within Daylights. I think you definitely have to give a shout out for that. Yeah. I think it's great. I think obviously getting the double O's and the pre-titles is great.
Lovely.
I love that as well. But I think there's just a lot to love about Daylights. It's like we mentioned them before, but that scene where he's, about to shoot Cara, it's just one of the best scenes ever. Then you get Koskoff with the defection and the pig and all that sort of stuff. Great stuff.
Yeah.
You've got that hotel scene with Pushkin. Brilliant. There's a lot of Fleming in Daylights, which obviously you've got to be a big fan of.
Yeah.
And Dalton does it well. Those steely eyed, I think he looks great in this film as well. Yeah. When he's in his dinner jacket, when he's got that fold over sort of thing when he's about to sniper, he looks great. So there's a lot of good stuff in here. A lot of good stuff. So go on.
Right. So my $1 million question to you is this then, Chris, right? Here we are. Right. We've just finished reviewing The Living Daylights. Roger's retired now. We've got the new dude in. Now, of course, there was some controversy because a role was originally given to Pierce. And then obviously the nastiness happened with Remington Steele. He doesn't get the role anymore. Timmy steps in. What do you think about Pierce doing this film? Do you think, first of all, first question is $1 million question. What do you think it would have been like with Pierce? Do you think it would have been as good with Pierce? Do you think it would have been better?
Personally, I think Pierce would have been that much younger. Probably too young, in my opinion. I think he might have come across
was Pierce in '87? Let's have a butcher's. How old?
Yeah.
Pierce.
Because I remember seeing pictures of him. He's obviously
age. So it's exactly 30 years ago to Living Daylights. Now he'd have been 34. So that is primetime Bond age.
Yeah, I suppose. No, that is true. But he obviously looked good. But I still think it would have been interesting to see, but in my eyes, I think Timmy did so many good scenes in this film that, I'm more than happy that he was in it and stuff like that. It would have been interesting to see Pierce. I think maybe you would have got a lighter-hearted Bond character, because obviously Tim is quite dark in this. He does a couple of the one-liners with a car chase and a few other places. I think Pierce would have played on that a little bit more. I think you definitely would have had the more suave Bond, I think. We would have seen a bit more of that. but the intensity that you get with Tim, those eyes, we mention it all the time, those eyes, and that sort of professionalism, I think, is what works. And I think this is a great vehicle, a great first film for Tim to showcase his style of Bond.
See, my thoughts on that are, this would be my second most wanted Bond film, right? My first most wanted Bond film that ever was would be George's Diamonds, right? That's what I want to see. Above all of the others, that's what I want to see. But I have a level of curiosity about what Pierce's Daylights would have been like. And I think...
What do you think, then?
Well, I think... Pierce was my boy back in the day, right? 13 years old when GoldenEye came out, I fucking love a bit of Pierce, right? And I think that what most people say about Pierce is that, good Bond, just let down by the bad films. And the one thing about Pierce is he never got to do any Fleming, did he? He was never really a part of it. So I think, had Pierce done this film, I think he'd have done a solid job. Hard to say whether it would have been better or worse than Timmy or whatever, but I think he would have done it to justice. And I think, like, when you watch every scene in Living Daylights, I can see Pierce in my mind's eye doing that. I can see him in the car chase. I can see him in the pre-title sequence. I can see him in every scene of this film, which for the other Bonds, I can't really do that. I can't see... You couldn't put Roger in Daylights or Sean in Daylights. I can't see that working. It just doesn't feel right. Whereas Pierce, I feel like he'd have slotted in there and done a really solid job. And I feel like, had he been able to do that, I think people would look back on him with a lot more respect than they currently do. I think that would have been his chance to really shine,
Do you think if he had come in and done Daylights, his interpretation of Bond would have been darker and they would have kept along that theme? So if he had done License to Kill, perhaps Bond 17, that was whatever they were planning, his interpretation would have been a little bit darker?
Tough to know. I feel like Living Daylights, I feel would be more or less the same. I feel like that would, it would have been similar sort of tone to what we got. I feel it's tough to know, man. I think that second film, I don't know. I don't know whether they'd have done License, whether we'd have got that story with Pierce in the role. I don't know. So interesting one to debate. If we ever speak to John Glenn, we'll have to ask him one day. You never know.
Yeah, too right. Yeah, definitely.
Indeed.
So overall, then, I know we don't like to rank them or whatever, and we'll try not to. But would you place Daylights top 10, top half, or
it's
what
definitely up there, man. Like I say, I think ranking them, as we've said many times before, kind of does those sort of films a disservice, because there's so many of them, and it's like, well, it's tough to get that granular with it, really. But it's definitely up there as an all-time classic in my view. It's very different to a Goldfinger or a Thunderball or one of those, or a Live and Let Die or a Spy. It's very different, and it's very much of its time, but I think it's the first, I suppose the first real Cold War thriller we got was From Russia with Love, right, back in the day. Yeah. And that's a very much, and everybody says that, don't they? It's the one Bond film that's super realistic and totally could have happened, and there's nothing too outrageous in there. And I feel like, obviously, you get some outrageous stuff in Living Daylights, laser cars and all that kind of stuff, and cello chases. But I feel like that's the first time we've had since then, like, a real solid thriller where you really have to pay attention. And I think maybe even since as well, you really have to pay attention to all those threads to stay on board. Like, there's me missing the diamonds thing with Whittaker. Like, it's easy to lose your way with this one. You could say that's a positive, you could say it's a negative, whichever way you want to look at it. But for me, whatever way you look at it, it's fucking belts and eight. Yeah,
definitely. I love it. I think. Yeah, for me, I think, don't like to rank it. I don't know where I'd place it, but I know it'd be my top 10. Yeah. I think there are so many great films.
I think I've got about 24 in my top 10, if I'm honest.
Yeah, so have I. To be honest, 24, 23.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, oh yeah, good point.
But overall, great first film for Tim. Brilliant first film for Tim. So there we are. First film. Obviously, he only did 2. It would have been nice to have seen him done a bit more, but obviously, License to Kill will come in due course. But we have a few other things to do before then, which is exciting as well.
Absolutely. So, shall we find out the answer to our Bond trivia question of the day, Chris?
Yeah, let's have a listen to it again.
Yeah, let's have a reminder.
What is the name of a city in the Congo that has the same name as a Bond villain?
Okay, then. So what town in the Congo, which Congo though? That's the question. Matches a Bond villain's name. So what do you think? So we've got to do some sort of some powers of deduction. I think is required here.
I think you had one that came to your mind straight away. So what was that? Let's have a think. What was that?
I'm probably going to say Kananga. That sounds like something you would find in the Congo, I think.
See, that's the one that came to mind for me straight away as well. That was the one. But then I was thinking, what else could it be? I thought maybe Malacca, Casino Royale Malacca. That sounded quite similar. And then a few others. But then I think, I don't know, did Barney say it's like a main villain or just any... I can't remember what he said.
Can't remember either. But
no,
yeah.
I tell you what, I think, I'd go with you as well. I think that's the first one that came to my mind. So I think you got to go with your gut, haven't you?
Well, let's do it. Should we have a listen and find out if we're barking up the right tree or not?
This is my answer to my trivia question. Which city in the Congo has the same name as a Bond villain? And the answer is Dr. Kananga. The city in the Congo is Kananga. I was looking on my big map that's on my wall recently, and I saw that and thought, oh, that would be a good question for James Bond Radio. So I hope you got it right. So see you later, guys.
We did it, Chris. We bloody did it. How
cool is that?
Very nice.
No, I'm chuffed with that.
Yeah, me too.
That's class.
Nice one, Barney. Good question. Not only did we get a trivia question, we also got a geography lesson as well from Barney there. So
there we go.
Excellent work. Good stuff. Yeah, indeed.
JBR is educational in so many ways.
Indeed it is. Good stuff. So next up, Chris, I have to clear my throat for this. It's time for the Guess the Quote Round.
Bond. James Bond.
Very nice, very dramatic performance from you this week. I like it.
It is Timmy channeling.
There
it
Timmy. Is. You got the deadly eyes and everything. So this time, obviously, it's time for the Guess the Quote round, where we guess a quote, and it was my turn last time, if I remember wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
What was it again?
I'm going to perform it for you. I have to just get into the position.
Okay.
Here we go. Sit down. Sit down.
Oh yeah. That's.
I'll give you a clue. It's not Bond talking to a tiger in Octopussy.
Yeah. That's a sit. No, I think I've got it.
Go on.
Is it? It took me. I think it's Spectre.
Okay.
I think it's Bond.
All right.
And I think it's to one of the security guards in the Hoffler Clinic.
Oh, I see what you've done there. It's not quite right, I'm afraid.
Oh,
I see what you've done there. That one is actually stay. That's what he says there. Yeah.
Oh, I knew. I see. I got it.
All right. So it's not Spectre, but it is a Danny boy, and it is Bond saying it. So I'll give you one more try. Any other guesses?
Sit down. Sit down. Oh, bugger. I think I can't think.
No worries. It is a tricky one.
Sit down. No, go on. You've done me.
All right. So it's Bond to Vesper's boyfriend at the end of Quantum of Solace when he's waiting for him to come home. There it is.
It is. It is to UNICEF. Oh man, you stopped me. I was in the right kind of ballpark.
You were in the right kind of ballpark. Yeah,
did.
absolutely.
But I didn't nail it. Well done, man.
It's rare for you not to get one of those, man. So I feel proud of myself that I've managed to bamboozle you this week.
That's good. Well, I think you'll get my one this week, but I'll do it anyway. Okay, so here is my new quote. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. That's it. 100 honours and 90 below.
Let's hear it again.
Okay. So, why are you laughing?
It's just so unexpected. I love those ones. Go on.
Okay. My quote this week is, that's it. 100 honours and 90 below.
All right, I'm not on the trail of that one yet, so that's a good one. You might have bamboozled me for this time, but all right, good stuff, cool. Excellent work. So we had a listener quote from one Mr. Dennis James Harden. You got the old triple barrel name like Ernst Stavro Blofeld. It's just Dennis James Harden. So should we have a little reminder of what his listener quote was?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
With the eyes,
mate. I have no clue what that is. Have you had any ripples?
No, it's not really. I think like Eyes. I mean, the only thing I can think of is maybe Live and Let Die, Voodoo Ceremony, or one of those type people. But I don't think that's it, because I think it would light up if I knew what it was. Was it? Was it?
Something, yeah. Sure. I have not even one inkling of a clue about that. So should we get the answer?
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it. Yeah, let's go.
Hey guys, this is Dennis James Harden calling you back with the answer to my listener quote there. That was from, that's my impression of Klaus Maria Brandauer as Maximilian Largo in Never Say Never Again. That scene is when he's in the helicopter. It's after they've stolen the missiles. It's a huge, gigantic close-up of his face. And if I had some sort of Skype thing set up, you could have seen that I was actually trying to do that exact expression when I said that. It's pretty addictive, actually, that line. Anyway, I thought it was funny. So, keep up the good work, guys. And I'm loving every podcast. They're a lot of fun to listen to, and gets me my Bond fix while we wait for Bond 25. Love it. Take care.
Whoa. There we go.
There it is, man. I think he's got us. Good one. Good stuff. We're gonna have to get a Never Say Never Again session on, aren't we? And try and catch that one next time. That's
I haven't seen it since we last reviewed it, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
But that definitely stumped me. So did we actually find out what it meant?
I guess I guess not. No, it's just sort of like a random little phrase that he likes to throw around. Yeah,
cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, old Largo. All right, cool. So we have a new listener quote from one Mr. Alex Robson. So should we have a listen to what Alex has for us this week?
Let's have a listen indeed.
Hi guys, it's Alex Robson here calling in from London. I just have a quick guess the quote for you. It's a very simple one-word quote, and it goes like this. Perfect. Once again, perfect. Alright, let me know what you think, and I'll send the answer in a bit. Cheers.
I am quietly confident about that one.
I might be too, and I think you're probably thinking what I'm thinking. Yeah. At least I think you are.
As soon as we had to listen to that, I saw your little face as soon as we heard it over the old webcams there, and I thought Chris knows what that is as well. Yeah, all right, nice.
Yeah, I think so. Good quote, Alex.
Good quote, Alex. We will obviously find out the answer to that next time. So, next up, it is time for...
Who wrote the score? Live and Let Die. Who played Helga Brandt and how did she die? Who wants to stockpile the water in Bolivia? It's Tommy Trivia.
That's right, it's time for Tommy Trivia. This is where Chris takes a random card out of the 007 Trivial Pursuit deck and quizzes me on it to find out the level of my knowledge. Sometimes my level of knowledge is outstanding and everybody at home goes, wow, Tom knows so much about Bond. Other times they scream at me down their podcast earphones going, come on, you bell end. I know what the answer is. And I don't sometimes. So, shall we see what it is?
Okay, we will indeed. So we're starting today with locations. Okay, Tom? Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
What city does Bond first meet Jack Wade in GoldenEye?
That would be...
Now, I know...
Go on.
No, I was just going to say, I know GoldenEye's your baby.
Yeah,
so I think
it's my baby.
It is your baby.
I would say that would be St. Petersburg.
I'd say you've got 1 out of 1. Woohoo!
Very nice.
Excellent. So next one is crew and behind the scenes. I think you'll get this one.
Okay.
What writer is Christopher Lee's distant cousin?
Oh, that would be one Ian Fleming.
It would certainly be one Ian Fleming. 2 out of 2. Excellent. Okay, Tom, we are now on to cast and characters. Who is riding on the front of the train at the end of the film?
That would be Baron Samedi, man.
Man, you're flying through these. This is great. Yeah, it certainly would be. Okay, so you got 100% so far.
Lovely.
We are on to the films. Are you ready?
Yes.
What does Bond offer as a stake in his backgammon game with Khan? What does Bond offer as a stake in his backgammon game with Cara?
Do you know how stupid my mind is? I started thinking literally a plate of steak, like you would have steak and chips at a restaurant. That would be 1 Fabergé egg.
He offered a prime cut, medium rare, with some béarnaise sauce.
Yeah, lovely.
It was indeed a Fabergé egg. Amazing. Okay, only 2 more to go. On to vehicles, Tommy. What is the name of the Havelock submarine in For Your Eyes Only?
Oh.
What is the name of the Havelock submarine in For Your Eyes Only?
Damn it. Is it the Neptune?
Yes, it is the Neptune.
Sweet. Nice.
Wicked.
Cool.
Excellent stuff. Mate, you're flying. Okay, one more.
All
If you get this next one.
What prize
100%.
do I get, Chris? What prize?
I'll give you a special handshake next time we meet.
I was worried about where that was going for a second.
Final category, but you only get the handshake if you get this.
Right.
The final category is gadgets and weapons. Okay, now Tom. Rosa Klebb has a poison-tipped blade in which shoe?
Oh.
Now, this is a toughie. Rosa Klebb has a poison-tipped blade in which shoe?
I can see her doing the little kick at the end and the shoe with the spike coming out.
What leg does she kick with?
I'm going to go with my gut feeling. I don't know if this is right. My gut feeling is the right shoe.
It is the right shoe, Tom!
Nice.
6 out of 6, 100%.
That was a close one.
The handshake is coming your way.
Beautiful.
That was a tricky one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Very tricky one, that one. Because I think some people assume she's got it in both shoes.
Yeah.
But if you look, I think I remember pretty much they all had it in the right, didn't they? I suppose what Spectre will do is they'll say, are you right-footed or are you left-footed? And we'll adapt our poison-tip blade accordingly as to your preferred kicking foot.
Absolutely, yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
So there we go.
All right.
I think so. Excellent. Cool. Tommy, trivia done and dusted.
Oh, I did well this week. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So, next up, the next round. It is time for... It's the music cue. That's right, it's time for Guess the Music Cue, where Chris furnishes us with a tiny little snippet of Bond music and we have to guess A, what film it is, and B, what scene it is. So it is very, very, very challenging. And I remember this one, I've gone on a journey with this one actually. I remember with this one, it was on the tip of my tongue and then I got it and then I've forgotten what it was again. So I'm back to square one. So let's have a little reminder of what last week's Guess the Music Cue was. Right. Is General Gogol involved here somewhere?
In a manner of speaking, he's within the... Yeah, I'd say in a way, yes, but not directly. Indirectly, I say.
Is it The Spy Who Loved Me?
No.
Fuck.
But it is a Roger.
I know I'm going to absolutely kick myself when I find the answer to this because I know it, but my brain is not working for me right now.
There are 2 characters in the scene while this music is playing. Not long afterwards.
Is it the music on the tape? They think it's going to be the get your brain in, Tommy. I'm too excited. Is it View to a Kill? It's a View to a Kill, isn't it?
It is a View to a Kill. What scene are we talking?
I've got it. Yes, there it is. So it's where Bond has switched the tapes when he's in the jacuzzi with Paula Ivanova. And Gogol and Paula Ivanova in the car. They put the tape in expecting to hear the secret stuff. And it's that instead.
Man, your excitement levels are through the roof.
I made it at the last minute. Yeah. Oh, it's funny how that happens.
Stuff.
Yeah, goodness me.
I know.
Oh.
Brilliant.
Right, exciting.
Okay, let's see if I can get the same reaction with this episode's
all right,
new music cue.
Let's do it. That's a very intriguing little piece of music there. That's not an obvious one, is it? That's a very sort of understated piece of music. A lot of it makes me feel something sort of foreboding is on its way in some way, shape, or form. So, all right, cool. I have maybe an inkling of what it might be, but I'm going to obviously get my brain in gear and we'll reconvene next time and see what it is.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Look forward to it. Cool.
All right then. So next up, it's time for. What's the next line? Oh, yes. What's the next line? It's kind of like a Guess the Quote round, but the answer is the next line. So, if the question was, who are you? The answer would be Bond, James Bond. Which film is that from?
I like it.
Yeah, very nice. So,
that's very good.
What have you got for me this time? Because I believe it's your turn this week, isn't it?
It is my turn this week. Now, Tom, this is an interesting one because I think you're going to know a part of it straight away, but there's a little line that comes before the line that I think that you'll know what it is straight away, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to say it. If you want to go for it, go for it.
Okay.
If not, time to digest, and we'll give it a go second time
All
round.
right, okay, let's do it.
Okay, so what's the next line is? Won't look like a suicide if you shoot me from over there.
Believe me, Mr. Bond, I can shoot you from Stuttgart and still make it look like the proper effect. That's almost there.
I'll give you that. There is actually a line that comes before the "Believe me, Mr. Bond."
Oh.
A very small line that he says prior to that. He talks about himself. He says, I'll give you the first little bit. I am a
professional?
Very close. A professor.
Oh, I'm a professor of forensic medicine, Mr. Bond. I can shoot you from Stuttgart and still get the proper effect.
Right.
Yes.
Let's nail it.
Let's do
Are
it.
you ready?
Yes.
The whole thing. Okay. Won't look like a suicide if you shoot me from over there.
Oh, no, I forgot. Oh, yeah. I'm a professor of forensic medicine, Mr. Bond. I can shoot you from Stuttgart and still get the proper effect.
That's pretty much that. Yes.
Thanks, man. I like Dr. Kaufman. I think he was great. I really enjoyed him. Yeah.
He is cool. He's a lot of fun, isn't he? He is a lot of fun. So, final round of today's Bond JBR quiz bonanza is...
Bond Girl Battle!
Oh, James.
Feels even better from where I'm sitting. Would you like it harder?
Oh.
Very nice.
I certainly would. Lovely. So this is Bond Girl Battle, where I have my lovely sombrero and we've got cards full of Bond girls in here. Tom tells me to stop and I pick out 2 cards. We've only got 8 left, so we've got 4 more rounds of 4 more heats, of round 2.
Mm-hmm.
So far we have Anya Massiva, we have Holly Goodhead, we have Xenia on the top, and we have Solitaire. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to dip my hand in, I'm going to give him a little fiddle, and you're going to tell me when to bring out a card.
Okay, stop.
Okay. And...
stop.
Okay. Right. So, the first one that came up is... Ooh. She's a bit of a badass. It's Michelle Yeoh.
Very nice. Bit of
Lovely.
Wai
Lin. Little Wai Lin there. Okay. And against Wai Lin we have the beautiful Miss Rosamund Pike as
Miranda Frost.
Yes,
absolutely.
Good one, Tommy.
I tell you what, I don't know if you're aware of this, Chris, but they're doing a new Star Trek TV series called Star Trek Discovery, and who is the starship captain? It's only Wai Lin.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
Oh, nice one, Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we've got Wai Lin, we've got Miranda Frost. Okay, let's start with Wai Lin. So what do we think? So we're looking at strength of character.
Yep.
Main is a priority. Obviously, looks is a part, come into it as well. And sort of, I guess, battle strengths come into it as well. So strength of character, let's have a look. Wai Lin, what do we think?
Well, she's obviously in the vein of a Triple X, isn't she? She's, the opposite number of Bond. She's got all sorts of, she's got those gadget cuff things that she climbs up walls with and stuff. And she's well-armed. at the end of the day.
Martial art expert.
I mean, there's that scene in her little secret gadget room where all those dudes come in and she just kicks everybody's ass, really. So she is well hard. Absolutely. She can totally hold her own. And
handle weapons as well. She's good with guns
she
and
does,
stuff like that.
She does double machine guns, doesn't she, at the end there? So she's confident,
Definitely. Okay, and what about in terms of Miranda Frost then as strength of character? What do we think of her? I know you haven't seen it for a while. Shall I take the reins on this one?
Yes, go on then.
So she's a fencing champion. So she's obviously she's a great swordsmanship.
She can handle a sword rather well.
She can. She always likes to keep her tip up, so that's always good. She's a secret agent. She is part of MI6. She is one of a fellow agent like Bond, who she's not too keen on, obviously with what he does. But she's a clever cookie. So she's out for number one. I think. Obviously, she's in cahoots with Moon and all that sort of gang. But she's really looking out for herself. I think she's a clever cookie. She knows what she wants and she doesn't care.
If I remember rightly, she's a baddie that Bond thinks is an ally, and then she sort of reveals herself to be a baddie, isn't it?
Yeah. So Bond doesn't know she's an agent. She accompanies him on this mission. He thinks that she's just there to help things along, and he kind of they sleep together and everything, and then obviously he finds out that she's in league with Moon and Zhao, and it's not too happy. So she has got a lot more to her, but Wei Lin just has. I think she's kind of like the modern version of, like you said, your Triple X or someone like that, isn't she?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Do you have any? Are you leaning one way more than the other?
Definitely, I am definitely leaning one way more than the other. I would say the one thing I can really remember about Miranda Frost is that rather fetching outfit during the fencing scene on that big plane thing at the end.
Yeah, she was pretty hot.
I was a big fan of that. I will be honest. Other than that, I think Wei Lin would probably kick her ass. I think in most sort of most areas, I would say. So my vote would be definitely in the Wei Lin camp for this week. What do you think?
Okay, yeah. I mean, Miranda Frost, she is capable. Like I said, she's clever, she's cunning, and she can handle a sword and looks after herself and stuff like that. But I'm tempted to agree with you. Wei Lin, obviously, she's good at martial arts, can handle weapons. She's clever. She's a fellow agent as well. Badass, helps to save Bond and stuff like that. And so if you're happy to,
let's do it.
Shall we stick Wei Lin? She is going through
to the next round 3.
There we are. Well done, Wei Lin.
This is getting tougher and tougher, man, because let's look at all the Bond girls we have in round 2 so far who've gone through. Anu Amasova, Holly Goodhead, Xenia on the top, Solitaire, and now Wei Lin. It's going to be tough to pitch some of those against each other and decide who comes out on top. So I think there's going to be a lot of listener votes that we're going to have to go to make that happen. I think it's going to get harder the further we go, I think.
Definitely. And we've only got 3 more rounds of 3 more heats of round 2, and then we'll move on. There
Absolutely.
We go.
Good stuff.
Bond girl battle.
So next time, the Living Daylights coverage will continue. We're not going to reveal quite what that is yet. So we'll reveal that through the social medias soon. But we have some killer first-class Living Daylights stuff coming up. And as always, at some point, you will get your opportunity to have your say as well with the listener 90-second reviews as well. So next up, a little bit of a mystery, but I can assure you it's going to be a very, very good episode and you're going to love it. So until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And James Bond Radio will return with more Living Daylights coverage in a couple of weeks' time. Now, as we said earlier, we're going to play you out with some Chris Cornell this week as a little tribute to the man who gave us one of the greatest Bond songs ever, in our opinion.
Definitely.
If you're on YouTube, I'm afraid you won't have the song because YouTube freaks out if you play music. So if you're listening to this on YouTube or watching it on YouTube, just go and have a listen to it. Type it in, find it on YouTube somewhere and have a listen to it and have your little Chris Cornell moment, because this tune is a belter and I feel like we should send him out and salute him with a kick-ass Bond song.
Chris Cornell, We salute you.
Good man. All right. Good evening. Good night. And we will see you in a couple of weeks.
We will. Take care, everyone. Bye.